My camera seems to have gone off.
Oh, goodness.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello Jr.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perrin.
This is an early month episode, so that means we are going to be talking about the latest news from the Pathfinder role-playing game and for Paizo. We're going to be reviewing a couple of books, but first, we've got a couple of guests on to talk about the Pathfinder comic book from Dynamite. First, we have the comics author, Mr. Jim Zub. Hello, Jim.
Hey, how's it going?
We're doing all right. And we have, of course, Paizo's publisher himself, Mr. Eric Mona.
Hello?
How are you doing, Eric?
I am good. Can you see me? I can't see me, but hopefully you can.
Well, I see a picture of you right now. I have to assume that that's what people watching on YouTube are seeing as well.
Excellent. Well, hi everyone on YouTube.
It's less animated, but it still looks just like you. Plus,
oh, good.
Goblin.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Yes. And the addition of the goblin, yes, it has panache.
Now, we are going to be talking specifically about the comic with Jim and Eric, but we're also going to be talking about how the comic is being used as a tool to help promote Pathfinder as a whole. Now, we'll get more into the nitty-gritty of that later on in the interview, but Jim actually has to leave in about 30 minutes. So, beginning of this interview, we'll focus on Jim, what's been going on specifically with the comic, and more of his writing approach. So, Jim, how about we start with that?
Sure.
We just finished the second volume, or rather, you just finished the second volume of the second arc of the first volume of the Pathfinder comic, and we're expecting the second volume to come out, City of Secrets. So, first of all, why was there a hiatus and then a relaunch of the title, and what are your goals with City of Secrets?
I think, in terms of the goals that we've had moving forward with the series, it's always been about trying to, present Pathfinder not only to the hardcore fans, probably a lot of your listeners, but also about grabbing new readers that they can jump into the Pathfinder world, that they can really learn about those characters and learn about what makes Pathfinder such a great game and such a great world to explore with their own stories. And so the City of Secrets is not only the continuation of the story, but it's also a really good jumping on point for readers to get to know the core iconic characters and also to explore a new location. The iconic adventuring group is moving to Magnamar, and well, they did so at the end of the previous arc, and so we really wanted to establish to the reading audience in comic book stores that this is the right place for them to get on board if they haven't already. And so even though it is a continuation of the previous Pathfinder series, there's very much a desire to bring people on board and to let them know that this is a great spot for them to jump in and try out what Pathfinder's all about.
Now, Magnamar's not that far off, both geographically and thematically, or a tone from Sandpoint, which was the setting of the first book. So why was Magnamar picked as the setting for the second arc?
Well, I think it's got a very classic kind of medieval fantasy feel to it, and as much as there are very exotic locations in Pathfinder, we also want to make sure that people are able to easily identify, especially the characters at this low, they're generally a pretty low level, and so we wanted to introduce sort of city type elements and kind of challenges that come with it, but not necessarily get too crazy as far as the options that are out there. These, as much as there is an incredible amount of lore in the Pathfinder world, and I absolutely love that stuff, when you only have about 22 pages of visual information that we can impart, it's helpful to be able to build off of what people's sort of expectations are at first. And I think as we go along and as we evolve, we're able to introduce more and more elements that are unique to Pathfinder. And so Magnamar is obviously not a huge stone throw away from Sandpoint, but I think it does introduce some new political elements and new creatures and some more specific sort of Pathfinder elements that people will recognize in the storyline.
Now, one of the things that we really liked about the first arc, and now that we've read the first issue of the second arc, we kind of are seeing a lot of it, is that it's very character focused, and in fact, in the first arc of in the first issue of City of Secrets, there is no fight scenes whatsoever, but I was still itching to turn the page, and then when I ran out of pages, I was like, I got to get issue 2.
Well, that's awesome to hear, and it's something I think I was a little more worried about in the early issues. We were packing in as much action as possible because there's that expectation that with a role-playing game story and with a fantasy story, you got to have the swords out and you got to be fighting all the time in order to get people's interest. But the reality is that what's going to keep people on board the story are great characters and great personalities and sort of their evolution as we move forward. And I feel like we've gotten more confident with that kind of end of things, where we're able to introduce the characters, and showcase what makes them special as personalities, more so than just being like, okay, they're going to cast a bunch of spells and they're going to use their special abilities. They're more than just sort of stereotypes of their classes. They're individuals, and they have their own goals, and they have their own purpose, and they have emotional stuff that I wanted to pursue in the story, not just have them be, mobile series of stats running through combat scenarios.
Eric, now that we're on the second volume of the comic, what are your expectations from Jim?
My expectations are that Jim will deliver an awesome story. I was really excited about the first story arc that he did. The first 12 issues. I think that City of Secrets offers something a little bit different, whereas I think you can read the original 12 issues as basically the origin story for the characters and how they got together as a group. Now that they're in Magnamar, it's a little bit more like, honestly, it's a little bit more like the type of Pathfinder campaigns I prefer to run, where there's a city and you never quite know what's going to happen, and the cast of characters can expand pretty significantly. And so I think that the scope has gotten significantly bigger, and the stakes, as you'll find out through the series, have gotten a lot bigger for the characters as well. And then the other thing that you mentioned just at the front, I think that we have a little bit more time for sort of more personal moments for the characters. Jim and I and our creative director, James Jacobs, I remember at Gen Con really spent a lot of time kind of going character to character and sort of saying, what's their arc, what's going on, now that they're in Magnamar, what opportunities do they have? And we were able to find a lot of opportunities for story in existing material from Magnamar, City of Monuments product, and some of the adventure paths that we've done set there. And so you'll see some familiar characters, especially if you're really, really nerdy for Pathfinder. You'll see some characters you absolutely recognize. And Jim's great. When you're working on a licensed product with an author who may be a great comic book writer, but maybe just doesn't understand the brand for Pathfinder, it's a concern I never really have with Jim. Jim's great with really getting down and dirty with the source material, and he hunts down a lot of the art reference, so we don't have to. So it's been moving really, really smoothly so far. I've got third issue letters on my desk right now for final review, and the issues just keep getting better and better.
What happens in the third issue?
I expect an awesome story, and I'm getting it.
Sweet.
Now, you mentioned, I was going to bring this up a little later, but since you mentioned it, you mentioned that some players that are really nerdy will notice characters they recognize, but some very lucky players might notice some characters they're extremely familiar with. Can you go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. We are doing a contest, or sort of a rolling contest called Heroes of Magnamar, and you can go to Paizo.com and follow the link on the left sidebar to the comic book page to learn all about it. But Heroes of Magnamar is a way for players to submit kind of their characters, their idea for a cool hero from the city of Magnamar, and we're having Dynamite's artists draw one character every issue, starting with issue number 2, which is coming out in about a month, and going all the way through the end of the series. Every issue will have a new original Pathfinder NPC submitted by the readers. So we've picked the first 2 already. We've got several more to pick, so there's still time to enter the contest. And it'd be kind of a neat surprise to open up the comic book and find your own character staring right back at you.
One of the characters that made it into the first issue of City of Secrets is Sheila Hydemark.
Looks like Ryan has lost sound.
What?
Yep, sorry. Ryan.
How about now?
Yeah.
Hold on. Ryan, you've got lag.
Our audio's
When I
jumping
say
around
make
a
some,
little
you
bit
say
here.
noise, Param.
All
Make
right,
some.
sorry for the technical problems, guys. Ryan, you disconnect and reconnect. Okay. While Ryan's... oh, goodness. Okay, so while
technology's
Ryan's...
great when it works.
While Ryan's reconnecting, not now. I'm certainly glad that we're going to get some personal character arcs in here. But like every good role-playing game, there's a combat chapter for a reason, and I assume that we're going to get some fights in the comic book coming, and specifically in Pathfinders 1 through 12, we saw goblins, we saw cultists, and we saw dragons. What can we look forward to seeing them beat up in the new issues?
Well, one of the things that we did very specifically in the first two storylines that we did, Dark Waters Rising and with Of Tooth and Claw, is we went for really classic fantasy creatures. And that was a very distinctive choice that we made because we wanted it to be inviting to new readers, and we didn't want to kind of confuse people with a lot of new material or strange stuff that they may not recognize from sort of classic fantasy tropes. Now that we've got those issues under our belt, we're feeling a lot more confident about bringing in creatures that are more Pathfinder specific, more world specific, both to show what makes the Pathfinder world so great, and also, I think, to just sort of broaden people's understandings of what kind of cool stuff we can show. So I don't want to give away too much, because some of them I think are going to be a bit of a surprise, and they're kind of integral to the plot that we've got going. But yeah, don't worry. There's going to be combat, that's for sure. As much as I think some of us on the role-playing spectrum, you might do more of kind of the conversational or emotional arcs of things, and I really love that aspect of the game. As you saw from the first 12 issues, I don't mind a good fight, and so I've got a lot of that stuff lined up as well. Yeah, I'll leave it to Eric to sort of hint at maybe some of the things we got coming in terms of specific creatures. But,
well, I mean, one thing I can say is that there are at least 2 creature types that I can think of that are coming up that are explicitly originally Pathfinder, not from mythology or previous RPGs or anything, but that are recognizably Pathfinder monsters. And then there's at least one monstrous villain who is a named creature that has appeared in a Pathfinder adventure before. And so, yeah, there's a lot of really crazy stuff coming, and recognizable stuff at that.
Can I just do a sound chest right now?
Yep.
Yes, we got you back.
You got me
So,
back.
Ryan, what was your question before we lost you?
What was my question? Oh, I was talking about how Sheila Heidmark made it into the book.
Yeah, that was a really important thing. I mean, she was destined to appear almost from the beginning. When you think of Magnamar, she's one of 2 or 3 NPCs that are really, really important to the location. And we'd already sort of established that Ezrin has an interest in joining the Pathfinder Society from the very first issue of the first comic, and that's kind of the framing device of a lot of his, writing, the captions that frame each issue. And Sheila Heidmark is the nearest venture captain in the Pathfinder Society to Sandpoint. And so when we knew we wanted to take the characters to Magnamar, really trying to set up a scene between Ezrin and Sheila Heidmark where he would kind of make clear his ambitions, and we'll see how it goes, whether she's open to that or not, was on the drawing board pretty early. I think it was one of the first things we may have discussed, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that even when we were talking very early on about developing those first 2 storylines, that was something that we had as a building block moving forward. As much as we had their immediate goals with the goblins or with Black Fang and stuff like that, there was this thought moving forward that each of these characters has to have longer term goals. On a total aside here, the Pathfinder Society is one of the things I absolutely love about Pathfinder. I think that concept as a framing device for adventure, as a device in terms of the play society, and also the way that it compels people to explore and to put their ideas down, and it takes the framework of what makes the game so great, and it gives it an in-world framework for it to happen. And when I read up on the Pathfinder Society and all the different, the politics that are around it and the secrets that are built into it and all the lore and those sorts of things, I mean, it's so much inspiration when you realize how open-ended that kind of stuff is. And as a storyteller, when you're working with licensed material, when you're working with other people's material, you're stepping into that sandbox, and that kind of rich, open-ended type of possibility doesn't come around very often. So, absolutely, one of my favorite aspects to play with.
And that character's been an important character in the Pathfinder Society organized play campaign as well, which has now got over 60,000 registered people who played at least a couple of times a year. And so that's a lot of people, and we wanted not just to put characters that the deep continuity fans would recognize, but also characters who actually, some of these players have, in as much as they can with a non-player character, have a personal relationship with this character through their, Pathfinder Society sessions. And she's also, of course, appeared in the Shattered Star Adventure Path, where she basically made her debut, although she was even mentioned in the much earlier than that. So basically, we're kind of put that in there as a present to Pathfinder Society people and to ourselves, and just as a way to kind of tie things together. I don't want Pathfinder comics to just feel like a fantasy comic book that could be taking place in any world. I really do want to root it in the world of Golarion and mine whatever bits of interesting characters or monsters or continuity that we can to kind of tell the story that we want to tell. I think the story always comes first, but insofar as we can make the story part of the tapestry of the world of Golarion that we've been building now since 2007, we'll take those opportunities to do so.
I got to tell a quick aside here because it's really funny. You mentioned about how players have a connection with these characters. I was at Emerald City Comic-Con about, I guess it was 5 or 6 weeks ago in Seattle. Wonderful, wonderful convention, one of my favorites. And while I was there, I was talking to different people would come up and they would talk about how much they're enjoying the Pathfinder comic. And this young girl, I mean, she barely, her head could barely get over the table, and she comes walking over and she says, "Are you Mr. Zub?" And I said, "Yes, that's, it's me, Jim Zub." And she goes, "You write my favorite comic." And I thought she was going to talk about like the Samurai Jack comic that I do, or Little Sonya that I did, which is like a kid version of Red Sonja I did a special for. And she goes, "You write the Pathfinder comic." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's me. That's the one I write." And she goes, "I play with my friends, and I play Sione. And so every time a new issue comes out, I read about my adventures and find out what I did." And I just thought, you know what? That is so cool, and that is so fascinating, because these characters, before we started the comic, they're on the cover of every product, and they're in practically every piece of artwork that's hundreds and hundreds of Pathfinder items that have been out there over the years, and they're the demo characters that you use for to learn about how to play the game. And so the readers and the people that I interact with, they really have a connection with these characters, and I try not to take that for granted.
And that actually that ties into something that listener Darren Caldemeyer was asking, whether we're going to see any... Oh, no, sorry, that was the wrong one. Okay. Listener Chris Kimball was asking if we're going to see any of the other iconics appear, or characters from other established Pathfinder fiction like Varian Jaeger and Radovan.
Do you want me to...
I can take that. The focus of City of Secrets is primarily on the main cast of the iconic characters. We have some plans, in the middle future, I would say, to get to some of the other characters. And I never want to say never. You never know what's going to pop up. But I would say that the primary story that Jim is telling in City of Secrets is the story of the 6 main characters that we've been with so far in the Pathfinder comic.
Now, Jim, earlier you were mentioning building blocks, and one of the things that we were impressed with reading over the first issue of City of Secrets is that every character gets the exact same page count.
Did they?
Oh,
almost like it was like a formula. It was math. Yeah, I know.
The Zub method.
The Zub method. That is actually on purpose.
Not on purpose? All right.
No, it is. It is actually on purpose. I'm amazed that you noticed that. Wow. That's. I don't even know if Eric and the guys noticed that. I don't do this every single issue, but when you're working with an ensemble, when you're working with a group cast, you really do need to make sure that no one falls to the wayside. And you have certain scenes and certain moments that are obviously going to be focused on different characters. And so I try very hard to make sure that everyone has a purpose, everyone gets enough dialogue, that if this was a game session, that everyone's getting their turn, that everyone gets to play, you know, and that we get to know how they're reacting and interacting with what's going on. I never want it to feel mechanical. I don't want it to feel like, well, it's time for Harsh to say something because he hasn't said something in 4 panels. You know, that's not my goal. But equally, I feel like each character should be, you know, involved and be doing things. As the issues go on, and the group starts to get pulled in various directions, one of the things about Magnamar and our plotline here is that the characters are going to be tempted and they're going to be pulled in different directions, and that the various forces that be in Magnamar are going to bring them almost to cross purposes, where they have things that they can get done on their own, and they feel like they might be able to do it better individually, and so they get pulled apart and they get tempted in many different ways. And so then you're going to get, the scenes are a lot more, they won't be quite so equidistant or equivalent as we go forward. But in that first issue in particular, if that's someone's first issue picking up, I wanted everyone to get a sense of who these characters were, and that you could sort of pick your favorites, rather than going, well, that person got the biggest page count, therefore they must be the main character or something like that.
Just want to give you a time check. Jim, it's about 5 to 9. How much longer have you got with us?
I've got about maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes. So.
Okay, I can ask you one more question, or you can just go into plugging what you've got going on outside of the
No, that's okay. Ask me a question. It's all cool.
Okay, well, let's talk about the artist then. We've got a new regular artist on this one. I believe it's Leandro Oliveira.
Mm-hmm.
So how has working with him been, and just your experiences overall with working with the different artists you've had on this book?
All the art teams have been fantastic, and I think that they've all brought sort of unique elements to the comic. What I love about what Leandro's doing is, I mean, he really is working very, very hard to bring that detail that you see in the role-playing source books onto the page, and that's a very difficult thing to do. You know, it's one thing to have digital paintings and to have spot illustrations or beautiful, you know, Wayne Reynolds, you know, painted covers, but to bring that kind of detail to every single page, that's quite a task, and he's done an exemplary job at really showing the city and following the reference and making sure that this Magnamar feels like a full and rich place, and you can see the detail on the characters' outfits, but it doesn't come in the way of the storytelling. He does a very classic kind of fantasy look, but it's distinctively Pathfinder. That's what I'm really impressed with, you know, what he's bringing to the page there. And it's not easy. You know, when I was looking at the reference material for Magnamar, it's a very distinctive city, and it's got geographical features that are quite unique to it. You know, you've got the Irispan and all those different aspects of the city that need to be shown. And there are times literally in the comic where I would say things like, well, the character's walking down this street, so it would be on an incline, and you would see this kind of stuff behind them. And that can't be fun, you know, for an artist to have to figure that sort of stuff out. But he's done a really good job with it.
All right, yeah. Jim, well, thanks for joining us. Oh, Eric?
No, I was just going to totally agree with Jim. I mean, I'm looking at the third issue right here. I wish I could show it to you because the first page is exactly what Jim's talking about, a massive scene from Magnamar, and the detail is just is amazing. Honestly, we've been lucky in that although we've had several artists on this title, I think all of them have brought, like Jim said, their own special flair to it. And you know, you'd see Andrew Huerta, the guy who started us off, just had this crazy kinetic, vibrant energy to everything he drew. And then you know, some of the other folks that we've had, they kind of made it a little simpler, and then it was all about, you know, motion, and it just looked great, you know, but it was different. And this is different too, but this I think is the closest we've gotten yet to kind of the art style that we use in our RPG products. And I think as a result, it feels more Pathfinder. And I love it. Leandro's great.
So Jim, you have to get going?
Yeah, unfortunately I've got to bow out. I've got a pretty full slate going right now.
Yeah,
and so I'm actually lining up another. It's crazy. I'm actually dashing off to another interview after this. So.
Do you have time to plug some of the things you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a bit of going to be like verbal diarrhea here. It's going to be crazy. So I'm working on a whole slew of books right now. So obviously, Pathfinder City of Secrets is in stores next week. Very, very excited, and that's coming from Dynamite. I'm still doing Skull Kickers, which is my creator-owned fantasy comedy series. We're currently releasing our 5th story arc, and that's published by Image Comics. The Samurai Jack was originally supposed to be a 5-issue miniseries, but we keep getting extended because Cartoon Network and IDW love what we're doing. So our 8th issue is coming out next week. Very, very excited about that. And the first trade paperback will be out next month. I'm doing the Disney Figment book, which is coming out from it's a co-production between Disney and Marvel, and that's an adaptation of the attraction from the Walt Disney World called Journey into Imagination. So I'm basically taking that ride concept and turning it into a full-blown mini-series. I'm very excited about that. Just going to be wrapping up writing on that soon. Today, I announced a brand new creator-owned series at Image. It's a supernatural action series called Wayward. It feels weird to actually be saying it out loud because I've been keeping it a secret so long. It's like the first time I've spoken about it publicly. And so that's sort of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer if she was in Japan fighting Japanese mythological monsters. I'm very, very excited about it. And then in the fall, I've got more exciting stuff coming up. So it's a good and busy time for Comic Writing Jim. So.
Can I just subscribe to just a box of all your comics to be delivered to my door every day?
I would be thrilled. Subscribe to all my stuff.
Definitely subscribe to the Pathfinder comic book.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, it's having this many titles and the variety involved has been just a joy. And then, as a lifelong gamer, I got to tell you, being involved with Pathfinder and working with Eric and the rest of the team has been an absolute blast. I'm really excited for Gen Con this year. I can't wait to meet more of our readers and get their feedback on what we're doing. So I hope that people really dig in. Eric's going to tell you all about the really cool outreach that they're doing with City of Secrets, the great game content, the contests, and the story that we're building. And if you guys have enjoyed what we've done on the first 12 issues, I think we're getting better and better all the time.
And can you just plug the interview you're about to do?
The interview I'm going to do? I believe I'm going to be stepping in. It's some Disney. It's a Disney setup interview, so I'm going to be talking about the Figment book. I can't remember the podcast. Oh my God! So I got to get prepped for that. So I'm going to be running around. The Disney press machine is intense. So.
All right, cool. We'll let you get to it, Jim. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Much for having me on.
All right, Jim, do you know how to leave?
He's our prisoner.
All right, he's still got a little window there, but it looks like he's gone.
Yep. Now, Eric, moving on to some of the how this book ties in. This is one of the licensed products, but of the licensed products, this seems to be the most different from the news we see and the schedule it keeps to everything else we've seen Pathfinder related. How does it go into coordinating getting this comic out?
It's a complicated process. We work really closely with Dynamite's editor, and he kind of acts as the traffic cop between all the various creative folks who are working on this. There are a lot of different people who work on a comic book. So there's obviously the writer, and then there's the artist, but there's also colorists, there's letterers, there's people who basically package the thing as a book and work on all the files and things like that. And that's just on the Dynamite side. On the Paizo side, we have our pretty much entire, I call it my senior editorial strike force. So it's basically me, Wes Schneider, James Jacobs, and James Sutter read every script, go through extensive notes just to make sure that it fits with continuity and to make sure that the characters are represented, the way that we want them to be. And then we even have a guy here, Mike Kenway, who's our licensing coordinator, who helps sort of traffic cop stuff on our end. And then basically Mike and Rich communicate when changes need to happen or whatnot. I mean, I probably get I don't know, maybe as many as 10 to 15 emails about the comic a day. Anything from questions about, well, how many of this, issue do you want to order, to a new script from Jim, or a question from Jim, or a question from the artist, or Mike is hunting down some piece of art reference from our art archive to give to the artist, or whatever. I mean, there's so many moving parts to this, and part of it too is, like, honestly, I'm just a big comic book nerd, and it's really important to me that the Pathfinder comic be really, really good, and that it sort of speaks the Pathfinder language in a way that Pathfinder people understand. And that's why there's back matter in every issue with game content, removable poster maps. We definitely don't make our lives particularly easy by trying to have all this coordination and make it as awesome as we possibly can, but that's kind of the name of the game, and so we're going to put the effort that we want into it so that it's as awesome as it can be. Some of the there have been delays with the project, and a lot of that just has to do, honestly, it's really difficult for artists to keep up a monthly schedule on a book, and so we've had some struggles with that, with the first 12 issues, certainly. With this, like I said, I've got the final version of issue number 3 on my desk right now, so there's been a little delay since issue number 12 in the Goblin series and the City of Secrets, and part of what we've been doing then is actually banking full issues so that we're more likely to hit them, in a monthly order as solicited. So that's kind of where we're at.
You mentioned the add-ons, like the maps. They went away for a while, and now they're back. So how do you determine the value of something like that?
Well, I think that for the first, I think they were in the first 6 issues. We did them. We thought they were really, really cool, but they didn't, they're expensive to produce, and they're a little bit of a challenge to put together, just because you have to write an encounter, and you've got just another piece of the pie. And so people said that they really liked them, but nobody really was bouncing off the walls with joy on them. So Dynamite said, maybe we should not do these. We said, okay, well, that doesn't seem like that'd be that big of a deal. And then, of course, immediately when we said, oh, we're not going to do maps anymore, people really made it clear to us just how valuable they thought those maps were. And so, with comic books, just like with the game product, we're often soliciting several months in advance, and so if you're going to make a change, you can't change on a dime sometimes. But we knew that we wanted to get maps back into the comics as soon as we possibly could, and so relaunching with City of Secrets #1 gave us the opportunity to kind of reset the clock and get the maps back in, because, like I said, even though people were not super vocal about it at first, once they were gone, they became quite vocal about it, and that's great, actually, because I like the idea of having a playable encounter in the comic itself, but I also, frankly, just like the idea that the back of those maps were just little mini posters of cool Pathfinder images. When we do Pathfinder posters here at Paizo, they're often have release dates on them, and they're really marketing items that we also kind of sell for people who want to put them up in their game room, but they don't really let the art sort of speak for themselves as often as I sometimes would like. And so with the maps and the little poster images on the back of the maps, I can kind of just pick the art that I think is coolest or most representative of Pathfinder, and then give the readers a little mini poster map that they can put on their wall when they're done using the encounter.
Now those same maps got... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Parham.
So I really enjoyed the maps, but I also enjoyed a lot of the rest of the back matter. So is there any changes or direction shifts that the back matter and the articles are going to take?
Not really. I mean, given that that City of Secrets takes place in Magnamar, a lot of the first series were focused on Sandpoint, so by necessity, the focus kind of shifts to Magnamar. And so, there's also, we've done a whole source book on Magnamar, so we want to make sure that we're providing some new content as well that's not just kind of rehashing stuff that people already have. Every issue will have a poster map. Every issue will have an encounter that goes with the poster map. Every issue will have 2 to 4 pages of just kind of general gazetteer background information or NPCs. And then every issue, starting with #2, will have the Heroes of Magnamar character write-up and illustration as well. So the main difference is we're back to the poster maps, and with the addition of the NPC, we have more content in the back than we've had traditionally in the past.
Now, we focused a lot of this interview on City of Secrets because it's the new hot thing, but we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the Goblins came out, and you have a writing credit in them. So what was it like getting hands-on with the Goblins and writing a comic book about goblins?
It was great. I absolutely loved it. I have a story in the very first issue of the Goblin comic, and it was kind of, I've always wanted to write comics. I'd written about an 8-page comic in a Mutants and Masterminds product called Crooks that I worked on a long time ago that was a superhero thing, and that was kind of the first taste I had of it. And I've always been, you know, I love running Paizo, but it's more than a full-time job, so I don't always have the time to kind of do the creative projects I'd like to do. And so we had this opportunity to put together a team of writers for the Goblins project. Each issue of the 5 had 2 different stories, and we knew we wanted to get kind of established comic book writers, but we also wanted to get, you know, some of the members of the Paizo staff who had, you know, good ideas for stories. And so Wes and James Sutter and I each contributed a story, and I can't speak for them, but I absolutely adored it. It was really, really fun. I really spent a lot of time on it, and I loved doing it, and I loved kind of creating a goblin. My story sort of focused on a goblin manservant named Gribbet, who is the result of a training academy for little diminutive house slaves in Corvosa, and so he spends most of the story wandering around in a tuxedo, and it's kind of his coming-of-age story from the moment he was kidnapped to the moment that he kind of learns how things work in the big human city of Corvosa and turns them to his advantage. And it was really fun to just kind of subvert the goblin tropes that we've set up since the beginning with a well-dressed goblin who becomes, if not addicted, at least very enthusiastic about intelligence-enhancing items and potions and things, and what madcap things happen once he's uncorked several potions.
I think my favorite moment from that comic was when the goblin bites off a noble lady's hand, and he just gets reprimanded because now they have to pay for the regeneration.
Right, yeah. I just thought that whole idea, I mean, it really started, for a long time we'd had the idea of halfling slaves. That was very early on in the development of Cheliax, which is a country that I made up. And so I've always been sort of thinking of it as like a very decadent society with, obviously, you know, there's devil binding and devil worship involved with it, and so the morality would really be questionable, and of course they have slaves in the first place. But, you know, I started kind of mixing those things together, and I said, okay, well, they like having little short slaves, and what would the noble who wants to be one step ahead in the greatest trends of house servants, what would they couldn't just have halflings like everybody else. They would need something a little more exotic, and that's kind of where the idea came. And that idea of that you can't really ever tame a goblin, and just the image of the splash page of the, you know, high society girl reaching out to pet the goblin only to have her hand bitten off at the wrist. I got quite a chuckle when I came up with that, and then just, you know, to get to see an artist kind of make it come alive on the page was great. I hope to write more comics in the future.
Hope to, or do you have any plans?
Somewhere between hope to and have plans. You know, I honestly, I have whole notebooks filled with like creator-owned ideas and things that I have there. I don't honestly have a lot of time to do kind of that type of material right now, just because I got hardcover books to edit and things when I go home every night. But, you know, it's a lot easier for me to make time for creative work when it's tied into Pathfinder. I mean, I realize how ironic that might be given how long it's been since my last module that I've written, but you know, it's something I'm always keeping an eye out for, and I do look forward to potentially new Pathfinder comic opportunities opening up, or other comic opportunities, you know, as they come.
Now, speaking of needing to worry about what happens when you interact with goblins, the one of the bonus covers that we've seen, the retailer exclusive, is tying into an event you guys are running for the launch here. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yes, so that is a worldwide event that is starting on May 21st, which is next Wednesday when the Pathfinder comic comes out. And it's called the Pathfinder City of Secrets Comic Store Invasion. So what Dynamite did was, as part of their incentive program, and they've done this with some of their other comics as well, is that stores that, or chains of stores that order 500 or more copies of the comic get a special, unique version of the comic book with their store's name written on the cover itself. I have a copy of it here. I'll hold up just in case people haven't seen it. Let's see if I can pull this off effectively. But you can see that there's goblins kind of attacking a modern comic book store. And so as I was talking to Dynamite about how we might be able to bring more gamers to the comic, I kind of came up with the idea of let's do an in-store event. And let's do an in-store event using the Pathfinder Society as in-place great GMs to go into comic book stores or game stores that carry comic books and to use the very special encounter that I designed that is in print only available in that special 500 unit, your comic store's name here issue. I wanted to give everybody a chance to play that encounter. And that encounter literally is goblins attacking a modern Earth comic book store, and the Pathfinder iconic heroes appearing outside of the comic book store and having to save the comic book store on Wednesday from goblins who are trying to mess up New Comic Book Day. It's totally nonsensical, totally non-canonical, if you will, but I thought it would be a hell of a lot of fun. And so we have about 60 stores worldwide that are participating in this program from all over America. They're going to be doing it in Australia. They're going to be doing it in Europe. You can go to the Pathfinder Comics page on Paizo.com and follow the link kind of at the bottom of the description of the comics for the Comic Store Invasion program to find out what store in your region is running the game. In addition to the goblins invading the comic book store encounter, we're going to have another encounter which is based off of the tavern map of the Old Fang Tavern that appears in the first issue. I've also written a big tavern brawl encounter using that map and the write-up of the tavern that appears in the comic. So I wanted that just to be kind of a little one-hour event, but I think it got so big it probably will take about an hour and a half to run that bar brawl, and the comic book store fight will take about an hour. So you can go into your comic book store starting on Wednesday, and provided that they're participating in the program, you can play about 2.5 hours worth of Pathfinder using material that otherwise appears in City of Secrets #1. So our hope is that although the GMs who will be running it will have it all digitally and will be able to print out special maps, our hope is that people will be able to actually get the map, get the comic, throw the map that comes in the comic on the table at the store, and just throw some dice in the comic book store.
Now, you mentioned that this is to get a lot of the comic readers into the role-playing game, but is there a way of flipping that? Is there a way for a gaming store to start bringing the comic in for its gaming customers?
Absolutely, yeah. The comics, Diamond Comics, are distributed by a company called Diamond Comics Distribution. Right, Dynamite Comics are distributed by Diamond Comics Distribution, and the biggest United States distributor for hobby games is called Alliance. They're actually owned by Diamond. So any hobby store that works with Alliance can order the comic book in any quantity that they want in order to qualify for participating in the program. My expectation, frankly, is that once these encounters are out there, people will probably play them at conventions and elsewhere, game stores, whatever. Kind of once they're out, people can do whatever they want with them, but the main goal is to get people into comic book stores. One reason why established Pathfinder players might want to pop into their comic store to participate in this event is that we've actually created some pretty cool boon certificates for Pathfinder Society organized play, although that you get for playing the encounters. You do not play your Pathfinder Society character, you play the iconic character pre-gens, but you will unlock basically a special benefit that you can apply to your PFS character by participating in the program. And they're really cool.
Can you give us a hint of what makes them so cool?
Well, sure. One of the things that I kind of thought would be fun in the comic book store encounter is it's a fully loaded comic book store. So there's goblins standing on spinner racks shooting arrows into stacks of new comics along the walls and cackling with glee. There's people trying to there's goblins trying to light the back issue bins on fire. And as your characters kind of rush through the store to try to defeat the goblin menace, they will pass a number of role-playing game items, including an open Pathfinder core rulebook on a table at the center of the store. And so when the characters pass by that, they will feel a compulsion to look at the rulebook and learn the secrets behind their reality and their world, and they can get distracted from that, and the goblins can poke them with dog slicers while they're looking up their own stats and things like that. And so we had fun with that, and there's a little play to that in the boon that you can get is a forbidden knowledge about how the universe actually works. It gives you some minor benefit in the game.
Okay, because it sounded like you just made the core rulebook a bad thing in the encounter.
The core rulebook is 100% a bad thing in the encounter.
Oh, goodness.
It's not a bad thing. It's such a good thing that it might distract you from the task at hand.
Okay, let's say I'm a GM and I'm planning on running the comic book invasion, and I have an infinite budget. So what could I do to make this the ultimate comic invasion experience?
Well, the first thing that you want to do, if you're not already hooked into it, is to go to the Pathfinder Comics section on Paizo.com and follow the link to the Comic Store Invasion program. See if there is a event going on in your region. If there's not, you should contact your venture captain and encourage them to set one up. I'm sure your venture captain would love to hear from GMs who are excited about running it. The venture captain, or depending on how rapidly you can do it, Paizo directly will supply you with everything you need to run both encounters, everything other than the NPC Codex and the Bestiary and the core rulebook and dice and minis and stuff like that. But I think that if you had an infinite budget, the coolest thing to do would be to pick up miniatures for all the characters, use the maps, figure out if any, and I'm not really sure how you would do this because honestly I don't really even know, but figure out if any of the stores in your region are qualifying for the the 500 unit special version that has both poster maps, because the normal version only has the tavern map. So that would be even awesomer if you had that. Or you can just get, I've given permission to photocopy or to print out at scale images of the maps at the copy store or whatever, and I think that would do just as well, honestly, as the fold-out maps that are in the issues. And so if you can just kind of make it a really intensely visual experience, I think that will appeal to comic book fans. And I always love it when the GM has the right miniature and the right map, and just all the pieces are in place. And given that these encounters are certainly the goblin encounters, all goblins and the iconic characters, with a couple of packs of the Weeby Goblins single figure miniatures that are for sale on Paizo.com, and the Beginner Box Heroes set of miniatures that gets you Valoros, Ezrin, Mauriciel, and Kyra. You've pretty much got the makings of a full service encounter right there.
Actually, speaking of the Pathfinder Battles miniatures, in the comic book, you just announced the new Pathfinder Battles miniatures set, The Lost Coast, and the first miniatures you revealed are actually based on art from the comic book.
Yep.
So is there just a lot of love going towards the comic book? Like, is this part of a grander scheme?
Well, yes to both, right? I mean, there's absolutely a lot of love going on to the comic book. Dynamite does a fantastic job. Jim's done a great job. The artists have done a great job. So we do love it and want to honor it however we can. But I would say it's all kind of part of a greater strategy. And so what the Lost Coast set is really is I took a look at a lot of the material we've produced since 2007, and the Lost Coast of Varisia is the scene of about 4 different adventure paths that we've done, several modules, the comic book, a lot of stuff in the city of Magnemar, a lot of stuff in Sandpoint, and I took a look at some of the miniatures that we'd created for Rise of the Rune Lords and for Shattered Star, both of which take place in that region. And there had been a couple of figures that we just didn't make, either because we didn't have the right illustrations for them, or the right illustrations came in after the set was already done, and I was like, oh damn, I wish I'd had that, I would have put that in the set. So part of it started with just a desire to kind of fill in some of the gaps of key NPCs and creature types, to really make it easier to run those adventure paths, but also just kind of like I wanted to do a set that wasn't themed to an adventure path, but that was more just like, hey, this is just a cool set with monsters and characters, and the Lost Coast theme kind of jumped out at me. I think we were working on the hardcover compilation of the first arc of the comic at the time, and the Cult of Lamashtu, for example, is a major force in the Lost Coast, and so I had really neat illustrations of them from Andrew Huerta already, and so it just kind of made sense to add those guys to the mix. And there are, I would say, a decent number of familiar faces coming in the set, some from the comic, some from some of the related products that we've put out in the region. And so, yeah, so the comic book is definitely a big part of it, but it is part of a bigger strategy that is kind of focused on the Lost Coast itself.
Might we see Pathfinder Tales tie-in miniatures?
Yes, although, I mean, I'll just be upfront, there aren't any in this set.
Okay.
I just got I just asked James Sutter to direct me to the archive, or to create the archive of all of the Pathfinder Tales character illustrations that we've done to date. I made sure that we used Eric Belial, who's one of my favorite Pathfinder artists, when we had individual character illustrations done for the novels. So you'll notice these in the tie-in web fiction that we do, and then also in the ad, the Pathfinder Tales ad that's in the back of every volume of Pathfinder Adventure Path. There's usually 2 full-body character illustrations, and it's always been in my head that Eric's an artist whose work translates particularly well to miniatures. If you give a miniature sculptor like a more impressionistic piece or something that's really heavily sketched out and not really distinct, like, oh, does that guy, how many fingers does that guy have? I don't really know because there's so much style to the art or whatever. That's a good way to get a really bad miniature. And so Eric's stuff is very distinct, looks great, and I know that it translates well to miniatures because Reaper's actually done a few, Varian, Jagare, and Radovan, and so I know it works, and so I have a giant archive of Pathfinder Tales characters. I haven't pulled the trigger on that yet, but I got an itchy finger.
Geez, I kind of just want to keep throwing things that I want miniatures of at you and see what your reaction is.
Good.
All right, Pathfinder Society, important NPCs.
Well, we've done Sheila Hydemark already. There's at least 2 more coming in the next 2 sets. Yeah, there you go. And that's kind of also on my sideboard as something else that we might get to. I may at some point just do a Pathfinder Society themed set. I think that'd be pretty cool. Although, I'd have to figure out how to have a mix of monsters and characters in it, because just based on feedback I've gotten from fans and things, I think going all monsters or all player characters leaves some segments of the audience kind of going, that's really not for me. So I got to be a little bit careful, but I have another folder filled with Pathfinder Society character reference as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, make sure that when you do the torch one, it includes the bathtub.
I would like that very much.
I know a lot of my players would love an Aramzay miniature just so they feel like they can kill him. They're that much closer to being able to kill him because he's tangible. He's on the battlefield.
I will keep that in mind.
Oh, gosh.
I had something else that I wanted to ask about miniatures-wise. Param, do you have any questions while I try and regain that thought?
Okay. Obviously, con season is creeping up on us. Is there anything Pathfinder comic-y related or miniatures related that we can look forward to at our PaizoCon, Gen Con, major conventions?
Oh, of course there is. I've got a handful of promo miniatures, basically repainted figures, like we did last year. We did Concrud, the sick goblin, for I think people who bought $50 or more at the Paizo booth. We'll have miniatures at Gen Con and PaizoCon. I think there'll be different figures, but we haven't really decided that yet. But I have several to choose from, so yeah, there'll definitely be stuff there. By the time PaizoCon
we've lost your audio.
I can still hear him.
Hello?
Never mind. You're good again. Sorry for interrupting.
Nope, no problem. By the time PaizoCon comes around on 4th of July weekend, boy, let me think here because I'm always one step behind. The next set of figures will be out. The Lost Coast set I think will be out by then, and so that'll be the big summer thing for minis. We're going to be big time at Gen Con. We've got the Sagamore Ballroom again, although we even have more of it this year. We've got a big booth. We got big releases coming out with the Advanced Class Guide, with the Skull and Shackles Adventure Card Game base sets, with the Iron Gods Adventure Path. So we've got a lot going on at Gen Con. We've got a lot going on at PaizoCon, and many of us will be making appearances at other shows. Well, several of us are going to Origins this year for the first time in a while, but we're primarily going to do demos of the Pathfinder Adventure card game, although I'm going to be getting in some Pathfinder Society while I'm there. I'm the guest of honor at KublaCon right before Memorial Day weekend in San Francisco, so I'm going to be running my office campaign, Kings of Absalom, there. I guess I'm running the same group through it for 18 hours, so that's going to be quite an ordeal, and it will be great. And let's see, we'll be at PAX Prime with a bunch of demos and one-hour games and some special prizes and things like that. Yeah, we're going to all kinds of stuff this year.
All right, let's go to audience questions. We've got a couple here for you.
Great.
Okay. Darren Caldemeyer asked, will we see the comics continue on from where an AP or module has ended, and will any Heralds of the Golarion Gods make an appearance soon?
Good questions. Probably not. For the first question about the Adventure Pass, one of the things we contemplated before we decided to do City of Secrets was adapting the Rise of the Runelords Adventure Path in comic book form, and did some conversations with Jim, kind of sketched out, just how long it would actually take for that to happen. And I think we figured out that basically, it would be pretty much impossible to tell a story that rang true as Rise of the Runelords in fewer than 36 issues. And I just don't trust the comic book marketplace to support a title for 32, 36 issues anymore. Even Marvel and DC are canceling titles and restarting them at #1 much sooner than that in many cases. It's just kind of the nature of how people buy comics these days, and so I didn't want to start a big adaptation that I would have to cut short halfway through and then for the rest of my life have people ask me, hey, when are you going to finish the Rise of the Runelords adaptation? Instead, we've been doing things like adapting Rise of the Runelords through our Big Finish audio dramas, which started a couple of months ago, and that I think is a much faster-paced format. Even there, I think it's a struggle sometimes to fit all of the story into, in that case, an hour-long audio drama, and it just doesn't. It doesn't, to me, at this point in time, make sense to do an adaptation of an Adventure Path. Now, to do a sequel of an Adventure Path, I think there again, it's like that presupposes that people have a lot of working knowledge of how an Adventure Path ended, and I think that would be challenging. What you're more likely to see is characters and maybe even some situations from Adventure Paths being woven into the comics in ways that you would recognize. Like, for example, Sheila Hydemark is a major character in City of Secrets, and she, played a prominent role in the Shattered Star Adventure Path. But I think that's more likely than just a sequel to an Adventure Path or to an adaptation of an Adventure Path, mostly just because I want to make sure that the audience will be able to follow the story, and I don't want to leave the audience hanging if for some reason we're on issue 17 and the sales are just not there, and we need to start over with a different take. So that's unlikely. As for Heralds of the Gods, I think that's somewhat more likely. I was one of the moments from the original run of the Pathfinder comic that I really loved was a spell that Kyra casts, and you can see basically a manifestation of Sarenrae above her, and I thought that was really, really awesome. And so You never know. I mean, we just put out Inner-Sea Gods hardcover, so we've got great drawings of all the Golarion deities. I wouldn't be tremendously surprised to see something like that, in the future. Now, that said, at this point in the characters' lives, they're not tremendously high level, and we don't really want to portray the gods as being so mundane that they're rubbing shoulders with third-level characters all the time and things like that. So it's a bit of a delicate balance, but I definitely wouldn't rule it out.
Scott Werner asks, with the release of the Iron's Guide Adventure Path, will all the new rules you'll need for technology and to run the AP be included in the AP, or will you need the technology guide to run it?
That's a good question. I think that the technology guide will greatly enhance your Iron Gods experience. I'd have to ask James Jacobs because I can't really remember. I think you need it, but I'm not 100% sure. Sorry.
No worries.
You ready to shift gears a little bit?
Sure.
Anthony Lee is asking about how Paizo is preparing for D&D next.
Yeah, we are kind of watching and trying to see how it goes. I mean, we are really satisfied with the Pathfinder game, and we're really satisfied with the Pathfinder business. In fact, we've sold, more core rulebooks in the last year than we did the previous year, and that's when everyone's known there's going to be a new version of D&D coming out. So, I know as much about the new version of D&D as pretty much any of you guys do, which is to say not a lot. I do think D&D has a great brand, and they can kind of do some outreach in ways that Pathfinder never can. It's really difficult to get a Pathfinder product into, say, Target, and I think that Hasbro would have a lot easier chance doing that. So I think in terms of acquisition, of getting people into the game hobby, D&D is really, really important. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they can, with the new edition, bring a whole bunch of new people into the hobby. I know people are going to be looking at it very closely, and so what we've tried to do is we've tried to set up as many great and compelling products to kind of be out around the same time, so that people's attention doesn't wander too far. I think Iron Gods is part of that. Iron Gods is kind of a great example of the type of thing you can only really do with a somewhat more robust and mature rule system. If you're just launching a brand new game, you don't want to jump right into, and here's how to do energy weapons and things like that. But so there's that for people who are looking for something a little bit new and different. For people who, are more comfortable slashing their way through a giant dungeon, we've got the Emerald Spire Super Dungeon, which comes out in June. That's a beautiful hardcover book that's got 16 different dungeon levels designed by some of the best-known designers that we have in our contacts. Anyone from, Paizo people like myself and James Jacobs and Jason Bullman and Wes Schneider and James Sutter to, folks from the overall OGL community like Chris Pramus, who runs Green Ronin. We've got Frank Menser, the guy who put together the Red Box for D&D back in the day. He's contributed a level. Keith Baker, the creator of Eberron, contributed a level. Ed Greenwood contributed a level. And each of those designers kind of brings their own sensibilities to the project. So, but it all works and fits together pretty seamlessly. So we've got that big dungeon experience for people who want kind of the traditionalism. We've got the Iron Gods for people who really want to take a step to the side and do something different. And then we've got the Advanced Class Guide as a way to kind of infuse some new interest into the class offerings of the game. We've got 10 new classes in that book. All of them were very thoroughly play-tested. Many of them are really cool and offer new things that are not available currently through Pathfinder rules. And so, if none of those things are particularly interesting, and you're not interested in playing the Pathfinder Adventure card game, and you're not interested in the Pathfinder comics, and you're not interested in, the modules they're putting out or any of that other stuff, I hear there's going to be another game out there. So, all we can really do is make the best products that we can and kind of listen to what our audience wants from us. And, our interpretation right now is pretty much keep on keeping on and do what you do best. And that's what we're focusing on. And it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with the new edition of D&D. But I'm several years away at this point from looking over my shoulder and wondering what is going on in Renton and trying to make all my plans based on that. We just make the best products we can, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
And we're about 10 minutes past the 1 hour mark. I know you're a busy guy. Do you still have a few more minutes for us? Or
this is
should we
the end of
close
my day, so I'm happy to chill with you guys a little bit longer.
Oh, cool.
Well, we've got one.
Well then, you're releasing 5 hardcovers this year. Is this, whereas usually it would be 3 hardcovers a year, so is this something we can expect to be a semi-regular thing?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think 5. I wouldn't fixate on the number 5. I think it's important to remember that the Emerald Spire Super Dungeon, being a hardcover book, is a very special thing that came about because of the Pathfinder Online MMO that they were doing. So that one, I would just kind of like not expect that that's going to happen every year. I think we'll always do at least 3 hardcover books in the RPG line, as we've done pretty much since the beginning. I think that Inner Sea Gods is an interesting test. Certainly the reaction creatively has been really strong. People really seem to like it. It's definitely, I think, one of the most beautiful books we've ever done. And the initial sell-through or sell-in was really good, so we sold a lot of copies of the book. How I want to take a look at how that's going to do 4 or 5 months from now before I can sort of say, yeah, and it'd be a great idea to do a hardcover in a non-RPG line, maybe 1 a year or something like that. Certainly not outside the realm of possibility, but I wouldn't call it a foregone conclusion either. But there'll always be 3 campaign setting, or no, I'm sorry, there'll always be 3 role-playing game line hardcovers at least every year. I say at least, but I don't think we've ever done more, so unless we were super late with one.
We've got one last question from the audience, Ian. I'm not sure if this was a question related to the comic or a question related to the miniatures, but David Landon Cole asks, Miss Feathers, ? No, period. I guess that, yeah. Yeah, no, that's not one. I mean, I'm not even I don't know if we've. You guys might know better than I have. Have we ever illustrated that character? I've never seen an illustration.
So that would make
it.
That's kind of the prerequisite for us doing a miniature. So, like, if there's a really cool figure or a really cool character that we've just never illustrated or we've never illustrated well, the chances of them becoming a miniature are significantly lower, unfortunately.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, she's only appeared in 3 scenarios, possibly only 2, and I don't believe she ever had a picture.
Then I think it is highly unlikely.
A while ago, there was an announcement that there might be some, I forget if there was Funko figures or actual action figures for Pathfinder. Has there been any movement on that front?
Let me think. I'm juggling so many different licenses that are between being announced and non-announced that I want to make sure you don't trick me into saying something I shouldn't say. We have never had a formal action figure license to date. We have a license with a company called Diamond Select Toys, and they make these little figurines called Minimates. I have one here on my desk of the Punisher. He looks like that.
And we just lost your camera.
No, I got it.
Really?
Oh, you've got it? Okay.
Okay, well then
we have technical stuff tonight.
Look, that's the Kingpin of crime.
There we go.
And then that's the Punisher. And so they have the Marvel license for these things, and they are doing Pathfinder Minimates. And I hope to have several of those actually at Gen Con. But whether or not that's going to happen yet, if you ask me in 2 weeks, I'll know for sure. But they're launching those with the one thing that they've announced is a 4-pack with Valeros, Mauricio, Harsk, and a Pathfinder Goblin. But if my plans hatch, we will have several more than that at Gen Con this year, and then we'll be releasing more down the road. So they're not action figures in kind of the Star Wars action figures sort of sense of the word, but they are little cool figurine toys. So maybe that's something that we've kind of announced that a while back. It's possible that's what you're thinking of.
I think it is.
Okay. Yeah. And yeah, there's several designs in the works right now, and like I said, there'll be something at Gen Con.
Excellent.
They showed off the 4 prototypes at Toy Fair this year, so I don't think there are any pictures online. I was surprised. I think they were embargoing photos so that none of the journalists could take them. I've got about 40 pictures of them on my phone, so if you come to Paizo and steal my phone, you can definitely see what they look like.
There were some pictures online, but the Goblin wasn't pictured. An Arcane Archer was pictured as the 4th figure in the set.
Okay, so yeah, that was actually from Toy Fair last year, where they'd just gotten the license, and they kind of showed off, like, drawings, basically, of the figures, and they used the illustration of the character called Kiramur, the Forest Shadow, from the sample NPC from the core rulebook. They used him, and the first I ever saw it was pictures of it from Toy Fair, so there was a little miscommunication there. That figure might appear down the road, but he kind of fell out of the main set because I really wanted to make sure we had an actual iconic character in there. Like I said, there's several designs in development. I wouldn't be surprised to see him pop up again. But the ones that they showed off at Toy Fair this year that were the actual figures were Valeros, Mauricio, Harsk, and the Goblin. And I think they come out in October, I want to say. Maybe sooner, but not in time for Gen Con. So I'm trying to do some other stuff faster for Gen Con. We'll have samples at Gen Con, but we won't have those 4 for sale. We'll have other stuff for sale.
Okay. Other stuff that will be announced in the next month or so?
Yeah, I would say in the next month it should be announced, yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a picture to give you guys a free preview here by holding up my phone to the camera. Real high-tech style. But I got to scroll all the way back up to Toy Fair to find it, so give me a second here, please. All right, here we go. I don't know if this is going to work, but here's what it looks like.
Wow, that works amazingly well, actually, and that thing looks awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Totally gonna buy one of those.
There you go. Pathfinder Goblin Minimate. I'm obsessed with these things now, so we're gonna make a bunch of them, I hope.
Okay, I hope he's released in a single pack too, because I kind of want to army build him now.
Well, it just so happens that if you come to Gen Con, I'm not gonna have fully packaged versions of those figures, but I might have some promotional repaints of different types of that Goblin. Maybe I guess you'll just have to come to the show to find out for sure.
Well, now I have to go to Gen Con.
Oh, darn.
Darn.
Chucky darn. What a punishment.
Chris Mulligan has just informed us that Miss Feathers has been illustrated on page 6 of Scenario 4-10.
Oh. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome.
Our audience always corrects us.
If it's a cool picture and I feel like people would really benefit from having that as a figure, who knows?
I can cue that up in a second.
Yeah.
Following with our audiences.
What's that?
This is not the first time that our audience has bombarded Miss Feathers questions on their guests. I think
now, are they
they've got a following for her.
Or are they Miss Feathers detractors? Are they Miss Feathers curious? How would you describe?
I think they're fans.
Fans. Okay, good. Well, we'll see what we can do. Oh, there. Oh, what an awesome
so it's
miniature.
Only a bust shot.
It would be a miniature of like basically a woman in a white shirt. It's pretty exciting. I could do that or some kind of demon.
I wouldn't be surprised if there are as many people that want Miss Feathers as a demon.
Oh God.
I'll keep that in mind, man. I seriously, one of the things that I love doing about the minis is the Friday preview blogs. Every Friday I'll show off, several more samples of upcoming figures, and I usually am, if I have the time, which I almost always try to make the time, I'm pretty active participant in the threads and stuff on those. So one of the things that's happened is a lot of people have lobbied for certain figures or made requests, and I definitely take that stuff to heart. So if somebody makes a big campaign for a Miss Feathers miniature, you never know what's possible. It's a magical world.
I mean, Adam Daigle turned his petition to get the Floomfin Pathfinder into a job at Paizo.
Right. I mean, it worked, right? So who knows how far Miss Feathers could take you.
And I hope nobody misunderstood that I said people want Miss Feathers as a demon. I'm saying they want her as much as they would want any other demon.
Right. I gathered that.
All right. Question. All right. I think because you showed the picture of the Goblin, we've got a few action figure questions. Okay. Bastille would like action figure accessory packs of scrolls, weapons, cloaks, spell books.
That'd be really cool. I mean, one of the things that I've been very clear with Diamond Select Toys on when it comes to the Minimates is that kind of part of the appeal of a game like Pathfinder is, for lack of a better term, sort of the equipment porn aspect of it, and so the Mauricio figure is kitted out with all kinds of daggers. Valeros has a sword and has got armor, and we're really trying to kind of provide a significant number of accessories for the figures. And if we ever do like honest to God action figures, I would take the same approach. I would want to try to get as many awesome images or as many awesome pieces of equipment as I can. Just to give you to pull back the curtain a little bit on kind of some of my thinking on products. Last year we did a deck of item cards called Iconic Equipment, where we took all of the pieces of equipment of the iconic characters and broke them out individually as drawings of each of their swords and their outfit and their helmet or whatever. The main reason to do that was to create an interesting and fun item card deck. But the secondary reason to do that was so that I had control art for miniatures and action figures of every piece of equipment that those characters had, which just makes my life a lot easier if I'm passing it off to a toy company to make, say, a Valeros action figure or something.
I love how you seem to think like a flowchart.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me today.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Eric. It's been a fun time, but I think now we're just kind of trickling out of steam.
Fair enough. I'm more than happy to come back anytime you'd like.
Excellent.
Right. Well, we're looking for a third co-host.
Is there anything you want to shout out, promote that we haven't already covered today, draw some attention to?
Well, I would just encourage, like I said a couple times already, but I'll say it one more time. I would really like, I want to have as successful an event as we possibly can, with the comic store invasion. I also wrote both encounters, so I just think people will enjoy them, and I'd love to hear, how they went. So again, it's on Paizo.com. Follow the link to the the Pathfinder comics on the left nav bar, and scroll down a little bit, and you'll see the link to the Pathfinder comic store invasion program. Click that link and it will show you if an event's going on in your area, and it's not too late to add some more. So give it a look and see if you might be able to participate in the program. If not, of course, we are still doing subscriptions of the Pathfinder comic book on Paizo.com. Subscriptions really help me. If people subscribe, it makes it a lot easier to kind of predict how many to print and how valuable certain products will be. So that's always really helpful if you're looking for a way to really support the comics. I would encourage you, A, to go into your comic store and participate in the program, but if that's not convenient for you, definitely think about getting a subscription. I mean, that's about it, man. Just keep playing Pathfinder. Like I said earlier, I know that this year there are other suitors out there, and we really appreciate all the support you guys give us, and we just kind of keep trying to make the best products we can, but that's not, that's a dialogue, right? So anytime people come to Paizo.com and they tell us what sort of stuff they'd like or where we might be able to do a better job, that's always really helpful to us. So, let's keep that dialogue going, and I hope you guys roll many 20s and keep on killing goblins, man.
Are there any charity events you might be involved in right now that you'd like to plug?
Well, thank you for saying that. I'd almost forgotten. If you go to the Paizo Facebook or even the Paizo blog, you'll see a program called The Gauntlet that we're participating in. Jason Bullman, our lead designer, Jessica Price, our project manager, Stephen Radney McFarland, one of our game designers, and myself are one of 10 teams here in the Seattle area in a charity games tournament that's taking place this Sunday at Card Kingdom, probably the coolest, certainly the coolest game store that I've been in. And we're going to be participating in a several-round game and nerd trivia contest to raise money for the Child's Play charity, which raises money to give games and toys to sick children. And we are up against the likes of Bungie and Penny Arcade and Wizards of the Coast and the Lady Planeswalkers, professional Magic players, and others. And we've raised almost $3,000 for charity so far. We've put up a number of sort of goals, if people help us. I think if we crest $3,000, because one of the games is called Ugtect, where you play a caveman architect. It's a board game. Jason Bowman is going to design a caveman official Pathfinder race if we hit $3,000, and we'll put that up as a free PDF download on Paizo.com. We've got other kind of cool things. We've already passed the most important threshold, which was $1,000. The prize for this event is an actual metal armed gauntlet, and you get to have that in your office for a year if you win. We really want that gauntlet, and not least of which because Stephen Randy McFarland and Jason worked out a deal where if we raised $1,000, Stephen could punch Jason in the face wearing that gauntlet. That raised us $1,000 in like 10 minutes. So people out there really must be mad about that crane wing thing still. And so Jason's going to get punched. So that's great. But there are other cool inducements online on the Paizo blog you can check out. If you've got a few minutes and have the heart to help some little kids, I would encourage you to check out the donations to the Gauntlet. We certainly could use your support. We're currently losing to a podcast, and not an awesome 3.5 Private Sanctuary podcast, but a dirty War Machine podcast, and we can't have that.
War Machine.
Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, we can't have that. So we've got Pathfinder's got to be mightier than War Machine. So please check out the Paizo blog, and if you're in a giving mood, please consider a donation to Child's Play for our Gauntlet team. We would really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks again, Eric.
Thanks again. Always a pleasure, guys.
Take care.
Yep, bye.
We will be right back with the news. All right.
Cool. So
Thank
Eric,
you again,
we're
Eric.
still
You
live.
just hit the X thingy. And you're good. Oh yeah, and yeah.
Okay. See you guys.
Yeah. Take
Later.
care.
Awesome.
All right. Before we go into the news segment, Jim Zub mentioned he's writing a comic about Figment. Figment's a pretty obscure Disney character, but is actually the thing I remember the most from when I went to Disney World for like the second time, and I was like 12 years old. And the last time I went to Disney, I was kind of disappointed that there was like very little focus on Figment anymore. It felt like it was really cool in the 90s, but they'd completely given up on the character. So the fact that they're making a comic book based out of this blows my mind.
I don't even know this character at all.
Figment is a little fuchsia-colored imaginary dragon, and he just sings a song about imagination, and he sings it with Eric Idle from Monty Python, and it's just a little on-the-track ride where you're going around, and Figment's playing these little magical jokes on Eric Idle. And, yeah, that's about the whole of it. And here he is, getting a comic book.
Well, I wholly support Purple Dragons getting comic book characters. I mean, it's worked for Kitty Pryde, so...
He actually... Figment looks a lot like Lockheed, now that you mention
it. So, that's... I have no input. I'm glad he's getting Disney work.
Yeah, seriously.
But I hope he doesn't get so much Disney work we lose him, because he's been doing a fantastic run. Like, you remember when they first announced the comics, I was like, I really hope this doesn't suck like I think it will. Because up until that point, we'd had the first round of D&D comics, which were horrible. We had the Warcraft comic books that were horrible.
Which ones are the first round of D&D comics?
Okay, it's actually the third round. The first round of WotC D&D comics, which had like the Eberron book and the Forgotten Realms book, but not like the old DC books.
Okay.
But
is it the one with the Tiefling in the cast?
No, that was the 4th edition. That's second run. And that one was pretty good.
Yeah,
but that hadn't come out yet by the time we were talking about this, and all I had seen were these game adaptation books that were awful, god awful, and the comic books during that time, a lot of those were god awful. Even like books I would love to read were doing badly at the time, and then it came out and it didn't suck, and I was like, awesome. So if we lose Jim, I'll be super disappointed.
Well, Hopefully, I mean, it seems like he's already balancing 7 comics. Is that what he said he was writing?
Yes.
If he can balance 7 comics, then maybe if he has to drop a project or 2. Seems like he's particularly passionate about Pathfinder, though. So I doubt. I think we would be one of the last things he dropped. Skull Kickers will be the last thing he drops, but then again, he's already planning on concluding that soon-ish.
Yeah.
And Christopher Kimball in chat says the first Disney Marvel comic, Seekers of the Weird, is awesome. I haven't heard about this, but if you're recommending it, Chris, I will check it out. I'll talk to Moss at the Fourth Wall tomorrow, see if he's got a copy lying around.
I also find it odd that Disney keeps putting out language like teaming up with Marvel and Marvel teaming up with Disney. They own each. Disney owns Marvel.
Yeah. I'm teaming up with my arm to roll this die.
Oh, darn your arm. Fire him.
I think they might still be licensing some Disney properties out to Boom Comics, which is like as soon as Marvel bought DC, you know that Boom was, as soon as Disney bought Marvel, you know that Boom was like, our own, like I think they produced the Sonic comics and Disney comics. But anyway, I guess we're getting a little late. It's 10 o'clock and we haven't even got to the news yet. Yeah, luckily, most of the news was already covered by Eric. So this will be a quick news segment.
Yep.
You ready?
I'm ready.
3, 2, 1. In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about all the latest happenings from Paizo for the Pathfinder role-playing game, and just anything in general that would be of interest to Pathfinder enthusiasts. The first item on our list, Eric Mona just gave a pretty fantastic summary of. That would be that Paizo is fighting for the Gauntlet. They're taking part in the Gauntlet charity event. It's part of Child's Play, and Child's Play, if you don't know, it's a charity to get games in the hands of kids. So I'm sure most gamers have shelves and drawers full of just games they're not playing. And then there's some kids out there that just they can't afford to keep up with the hobbies like we can as working adults. And so the idea is Child's Play just collects and redistributes the games that you're not playing anymore anyway. And right now they're doing a fundraiser in the Washington area, in the Seattle area, that Paizo's participating in. Like Eric said, it's Jason Bowman, himself, Jessica Price, and Stephen Radney McFarlane are making up the team. They're going to be playing a bunch of board games. Param, have you ever played UGTECT?
No, but I've seen it played, and I want to play it.
UGTECT
when they
is
were doing
amazing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You go for it. Okay.
All right. Well, I own UGTECT, and for anyone that doesn't know it, you are playing Caveman Architects. It's 2 teams competing against each other. Each team has a foreman who has an inflatable caveman club. This comes in the box, and it is the main component of the game. And then it's just these geometrical shapes. So you've got the blue triangle, the white triangle, etc., etc. And then you've got a card of the caveman language you are allowed to use. And so, like, anyway, like let's say Ooga Booga means pick up, whereas Ooga Booga, saying it twice, means put it over there. And so you find yourself just constantly being like Ooga Booga, oh, and you've got gestures like clapping above your head. That means the triangle-shaped piece, and stomping your feet is indicating a different piece. So you're clapping over your head, saying nonsense caveman language, and then you're expecting your caveman architects, your UGTECs, to pick up the right piece. And when they get it right, you hit them with the club. But if they get it wrong, you hit them twice. And so it's a ridiculous, violent game. It's an amazing party game, and I love the fact that it's part of the tournament. And it's super appropriate that they're going to be releasing a caveman humanoid race for Pathfinder. From the blog post, it seems like if they make $3,000, they're just releasing it free to everybody. So it's not just the people that are contributing, but you know, the more people that contribute, the more likely we are to get the caveman humanoid race. And then at $4,000, they're going to be releasing a PDF of ally cards for the Pathfinder Adventure card game. The cards will be based on the 4 team members in the charity event. And the $5,000 one is pretty intriguing to me. It's a dramatic reading of a chapter from a Pathfinder Tales novel featuring members of the Paizo staff as the characters. And I would love to hear a dramatic reason by Jason Bowman. He has that, like, just deep, recognizable voice, but he's also so expressive with his voice that he could just read all the characters. I just want a tape of Jason Bowman. I want an MP3 of Jason Bowman reading a Pathfinder Tales novel.
gosh, this just turned into 80s romance movie territory.
Oh, Eric Mona just came into our chat and said, hey, one thing he forgot to mention, the tech guide is required for Iron Gods, which is why we are planning to add all relevant bits to the PRD. Oh, cool. So all of the relevant rules from the tech guide will be added to the Pathfinder reference document. That's the first time they've done that with a floppy, as far as I know. Oh, wait, unless... Well, there's the PRD, which is then relayed onto... which can be used in any product, and the people at the PFSRD tend to... sorry, I'm having a little trouble here. There are two different online rules reference documents. There is Paizo's, which is the PRD, and then there is the PFSRD. And the PFSRD collects all open content, whereas Paizo's pretty much only collects the hardcover content. So, Eric, if you're still listening, are you talking about, is this going to be released on the PRD where it's usually only reserved for hardcover content?
I think that's what he means.
That would be awesome.
Yep. And there's actually 3 archives. Those are the 2 most ones, but I always want to give love to Archive of Nethys whenever it comes up, where D20 PFSRD does a lot of great stuff, and it's a great reference for playing the game and rules and stuff. But they also include third-party content. And Archive of Nethys is rather pure, all open content of official Paizo material, so it doesn't have any third-party stuff. It isn't as flashy. It doesn't have as many features. But if you're doing writing or any publishing type work, Archive of Nethys is usually a safer route because it has all that worked out and all the relevant licenses.
I'm glad you brought up the Archives of Nethys because it doesn't get as much love as it deserves, and it's really pretty. It's got a great interface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I use all 3 of them, but when I want to know, is this official, where is this official, and how much can I use it, I go to Archives of Nethys. Okay,
Eric answered yes, it's going to go on the official PRD. Cool. Thank you, Eric. So that's good because, who was it? Was it Scott Werner that asked the question originally? Yeah, it was Scott. So he was saying that as much as he appreciates cross-pollination in marketing, he's a little weary of having to buy an additional product just to run the adventure path, which already requires him to buy 6 products and more if he wants to run, with the cards, with the miniatures. There's a lot of products you could buy, and so this could be one more product he had to buy. But no, Paizo was nice enough to put it on the PRD, and so it's not a product you have to buy to run the AP.
That's definitely a good way to do it, because I would, as much as I like not having dependence on a lot of products to run the APs, I don't want a whole lot of my AP taken up by rules materials that I'm going to already have elsewhere, especially if it's going to be extensive, and it sounds like in this case it is.
Yeah, I mean, they just released the Mythic Adventures tied directly into the Wrath of the Righteous, and that's a full hardcover book, and it feels like you would need almost as much material to run Iron Gods. Like, you're adding a lot of new content to really bring the Iron Gods theme to life. So I expect that the technology guide is going to be dense with rules material.
And on that subject, just tangent on that, I have to say that running Wrath of the Righteous right now is actually a lot more daunting than any other adventure I've run, simply because the weight and number of special rules at the table. I mean, the box I'm bringing to the table now has all 3 bestiaries, 4 bestiaries, NPC codex, mythic adventures, 1,000 other things I need to run this, and that's not even including reference material like World Wound, Demon Hunter's Handbook, and it's used extensively throughout the product, so I'm constantly having to flip through dozens of books to run the game, and it does weigh heavy.
Next bit of news actually ties into the first bit of news we brought up. We've got some Advanced Class Guide spoilers, and this was one of the rewards for reaching the $2,500 level for the fundraiser. Jason Millman released 3 tidbits of information about things that are going to be in the Advanced Class Guide. The first is the Arcanist. He's going to have an ability called an exploit called Quick Study, which will let him swap out a spell for an existing spell. By expending 1 point from his Arcane Reservoir, he has to have his spellbook on hand. And that's really cool because a lot of iconic art of wizards not necessarily iconic in Pathfinder, but just if you think of a wizard, you'll often see him with the spellbook open while he's casting some crazy spell. Whereas really in Pathfinder, there's no reason for the wizard or a spellcaster that uses a spellbook to have his spellbook out anytime other than the hour he's memorizing in the morning. Like after that, you want to put it in a vault.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, quite the opposite. You're very much incentivized to have this in a box, inside another box, inside another box, inside the extra-dimensional portal. Inside. So do not touch my spellbook. The only other reason up until now were those magical spellbooks that they released in, I think, Ultimate Magic that had like properties attached to them, which I thought was really cool. I wish they'd do some more with those. And other than that, yeah, you're right. And this might have me rebuild one of my favorite characters because you just that imagery of come on, I got in here. Let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it. Banish demon. Just that whole image of like a frantic spellcaster flipping through his book. So where did I put that hold portal spell? Where did I put that hold portal spell?
Oh. Eric Mona has a comment regarding what you just said earlier, Pam. He says that they specifically scaled back the number of required sources for adventure paths after Wrath of the Righteous to avoid just that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I very much enjoy using all my stuff. I just did not. I mean, like I said, it's literally tied into every hardback they got, and then a lot of softbacks. And I didn't even mention the kingdom building rules are used, the war rules are used, and it makes for a very like this is like flexing your Pathfinder muscle. This is everything Pathfinder has to offer at the table, and it's awesome. But daggone, I broke my box carrying all the books required. That big old box I built, it broke.
Wow.
I'm definitely glad they're scaling back.
Eric, since you're still following the podcast and responding, do you want to just join us for the rest of the episode? We'll follow our regular format, but clearly you got nothing else to do. You can feel free to click that link and join us again, or continue to post in the comments. Either way, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Oh man, the Shaman class feature was previewed as well. They have a hex called Shapeshift. In fact, a whole set of hexes that are open to all Shamans instead of before this in the beta build. All your hexes seem to be really dedicated to the type of Shaman you were. So I find this is cool because like everybody that wants to play a Shaman wants to turn into animals because that's cool. So one of the things they have is called Shapeshift. And I've lost it. Oh, here it is. The shaman transforms herself into another form of a number of minutes per day equal to her level as alter self. This duration does not need to be consecutive.
In 1 minute increments.
Yeah, 1 minute increments. Which is cool. And at 8th level, it becomes B-shape, which is the coolest of the polymorphs.
And this is actually pretty convenient for our listeners anyway, because on our forums, Tetsuba was just asking if there are any good shape-shifting classes in Pathfinder besides the Druid, and the forum members pretty much said no, unfortunately, not even with all the archetypes out there.
Yeah,
the Druid's basically the only thing.
That's kind of cool, but it doesn't do full shape-shifting.
No, so this will be the first full shape-shifting class, and that's surprising. Like, that's a whole theme of a character that's never been fully explored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you are a druid, it's really hard to make a pure shape-shifty druid, and there's all that extra druid baggage on you.
We got one more preview, one more spoiler from the Advanced Class Guide, and it's not based on one of the new classes, it's based on the rogue. We're getting a new rogue archetype called the Counterfeit Mage. And the class feature that it's given is the Signature Wand, which lets a counterfeit mage study a wand for an hour, call it its signature wand, and then can use that as though without needing a use magic device check.
Oh, okay. Well, that's useful. Oh, and he can draw it as a free action, so it's like, bam, spell.
That ability is cool, but I'm actually more excited by the whole concept of a counterfeit mage as a rogue archetype. I
mean, it's a classic archetype in fiction. The whole I'm not really a magic. In fact, heck, they got a whole nation based on fake it till you make it here. With Razmir, not a rogue, but similar concept. So yeah, I mean, I like it. It's cool. I hope the rest of the abilities are as cool. All right. In other news, Paizo is hiring again. It sounds like we give this announcement every episode. It's a new position, but this time they need an editor. And you're mentioning that in one of our no questions hints at maybe why they need an editor.
Right, but that no question will only be in the next episode. But basically, one of our listeners was commenting that he was a little bit worried about the editing quality lately, that he's finding a few more typographical errors and a few more questionable rules slipping into the books, like getting into publication. And now I'm speculating that maybe Paizo has noticed a similar need, and they are posting this job for an editor position. It's only a temporary position. It's a 3-month position, so it's not the kind of thing that I would recommend people quit their job and move to Seattle for. But if you are in the Seattle area and you are an editor by trade or by training, or you just feel you're very qualified for the position, it's 3 months that will get you a great item for your resume that you've worked for Paizo as an editor. And Ryan Macklin, who is now a full-time editor at Paizo, started doing part-time editing for them. So there's great potential in a position like this. So you can go to paizo.com/paizo/about/jobs and read over the full editor position there. And the final bit of news, I don't even know if it bears repeating because we went into it quite in depth in the interview, but that we know the theme of the next Pathfinder battle set, it is the Lost Coast. So like Eric Mona said in the interview, the Lost Coast is the name given to the coastal land of southwestern Varissia, stretching from the city of Magnamar to the Fogscar Mountains. Lost Coast is a 45-figure set featuring friends and foes from the region of the same name, and it is sure to please Pathfinder fans, new and veteran alike.
Yep. And that's all the news we've got. We'll return very shortly with Read Magic.
Pam, I like you as the transition guy. Do you want that to be your official job now?
No, not every time.
Okay. All right, Eric tells us he's multitasking.
Excellent. Continue to multitask, Eric.
Oh, Christopher Kimball brings up the Alchemist Beast Morph is shapeshiftery. And that's true, and that's actually an important, or that ties into one of the books we'll be reviewing in the Read Magic segment, which is coming up right about now, if you've got all your stuff on hand.
Yes. Before we do that, considering the time crunch, number 3, drop it. Yes, no?
Number 3, yeah. I feel bad, because it is a book that there was a lot of interest in, and it's been bumped twice.
Yeah, but it's losing relevance the longer we get from it. Sorry.
So maybe I'll do a written review.
Yep.
Because anyway, for people that are listening right now, we're talking about Bastards of Golarion. Got bumped a couple of weeks ago.
Before we bump it, let's just put up that. Let's talk about its cover. I'm going to pull it up.
Okay.
Because that's the one thing I want to make sure we did.
Is this just bonus material for people listening live, or do you want it to be part of the segment?
Yeah, because I can't show them on the audio.
Okay, so yes, bonus material.
Yeah, this is just bonus material for you live guys.
Okay, cool.
I'll cut this out of the episode because I can't show a cover on the audio.
It's true.
All right, the most appropriate cover ever for this episode, or for this book. I've got it up on the screen share right now, and because you have bastards of all kinds of varieties. First, you have the half-orc, which is obviously one of the iconic bastards. You've got we also have the iconic Magus, who is both a bastard class and a literal figurative bastard, according to his personality write-up. And finally, we have the bastard of all monsters, the owlbear.
Well, and Celtiel is also half-elf, which is another of the bastard races.
Mm-hmm. Everything on first, I really like the cover.
So he's a half-and-half race, half-and-half class, half-and-half monster with his half-and-half ally.
Yes. All right. Just wanted to, before we left that, I just wanted to show that off. All right.
No, it's definitely, there was a lot of thought put into this cover. It's really clever.
All right. Okay, so other than that...
All right, you ready to go into the review section, the Read Magic segment?
Yep. Oh, wait. I have a book in my hands, but I can't put screenshots up of a book in my hand.
What's that?
So I have the book in my hands.
Okay, cool.
But I can't put screenshots up of the book in my hand. So
3.
give me. Oh.
No, but you can go to the product page.
Oh, yeah, silly me. Product page. 1 second. Sorry, you guys.
Is there a delay all of a sudden?
Yeah, I get weird delays. When I say make some, you say noise. Make some.
Aram, hold on a second. Noise.
30 seconds.
Wow. All right, I'll quit and come back in.
Yep. All right, guys, while we wait for Ryan, this is a good... we are going to be reviewing 2 books during the Read Magic section, Inner Sea Combat and the Alchemist Handbook. So if you've got any questions about those 2 books, this would be a perfect time to start getting them in. I will be doing the Inner Sea Combat. Ryan's going to be doing Alchemists. And I see we have a Ryan back with us. Make some.
Noise.
Much better.
Excellent. All right, let me just put up my lower third.
I'm getting the screenshots of the 2. Where's Alchemist at? I usually think of this in advance. I forgot about it this time.
The links are in the show notes.
Oh, derp. Oh, Alchemist. Okay, I'm good.
You're good? All right, give me 1 second. I am good as well. Thanks for your patience, everybody. 3, 2, 1. In the Read Magic segment, we talk about the latest books that we've been reading for the Pathfinder role-playing game, either from Paizo or occasionally from third-party publishers. Today, we are looking at 2 books that came out from the softcover lines that I'm kind of shocked they came out this month because it seems like both of these books have had a lot of buzz behind them. So, Param, you're going to be reading, or you're going to be telling us your thoughts on Pathfinder campaign setting, Inner Sea Combat. How did that go?
Okay, first, very pleased overall with the book, and very surprised by the book for a lot of different reasons. The first is, it took this book this long to come out? Question mark? I mean... what the Inner Sea Combat is it is the Inner Sea companion to Ultimate Combat. So it's been a couple of years late now. Now, I don't know if it's a couple of years late or they just now thought about doing it, but this very much lives up to that name. So to start off with, if you do not have Ultimate Combat, this book will be a very limited utility to you. It very much ties into that book, the optional rules, the classes, everything developed by that book. This book ties into extremely heavily, even a lot of the formatting, and I almost felt like time traveling back a little bit reading this book because parts of it were dealing with systems that they introduced in Inner Sea Combat and changed style about later. And so I don't usually see a lot of material like that. The book is broken up into 5 parts. The first part is the Combat of the Inner Sea, and I'm going to screen share. The second part is Variant Combat, then Combat Schools, then Martial and Skilled Specialist, and finally Magic Items. And the Inner Sea the Combat of the Inner Sea section, opens up the book, and this is really the fluff section. This is talking about how different martial disciplines are handled in the different areas of Golarion, various different schools. This is the write-up of what it's like to fight in these various areas or to be a martial-focused character. We've seen this sort of fluff write-up in several other books. It's done about as well. Nothing exceptional here because they kept it very brief. And the reason they had to keep it very brief is this is probably the most crunch I've seen in a campaign setting book ever, including its companion, Inner Sea Magic. This almost feels overcrowded with crunch material, because once you get past those 5 or 6 pages of Combat of the Inner Sea, it goes straight into the crunchy bits and doesn't let up. But there is one extremely notable thing in here, and it borrowed this page from Inner Sea Magic, and I noticed that you liked it a lot, is it has combatants of the Inner Sea, which goes through famous characters in the Inner Seas that have a martial bent. From all kinds of various sources, including Adventure Paths, Pathfinder Society itself, and Pathfinder Tales. Radovan makes his appearance in here, and it lists Radovan as a chaotic good. That surprises me. Male Tiefling Rogue 5/Monk 2, bodyguard of Count Varian Jaeger of West Crown, and former street thug.
All right, why does chaotic good surprise you?
Well, lots of reasons. I mean, reading the books, he definitely has I'm not going to be a complete jerk about it bent to him, but at several times he makes some questionable choices and some very violent choices, and then he was able to get smited awful real good.
Are you suggesting, well, he's definitely not evil, though.
Well, no, maybe. A Master of Devils, yeah.
Sure, but he wasn't completely in charge of his faculties there.
Yeah, true. But a paladin smited him, and it worked. That's a real binary choice there. Did a god send his wrath through this metal blade? Yes. Ouch, I'm evil. It's not a litmus test I recommend anybody undertake, but it seems very definitive. Though, yeah, through the later books, he does sort of go through his soul-searching eye, and then there was the part about killing a demon inside of him, all kinds of fun stuff for Radovan fans. But I guess I was just surprised. But, you know, this is a good section, has lots of characters. Oh, the other one that surprised me, and we covered it a lot today, Sheila Hardmarch is in this book, not Magic book. I always assumed Sheila was a very magey, wizardy, sorcerer-y type character because of every piece of art that's ever been drawn about her. But evidently she's not. She is a Fighter 3 Monk 4. So that staff, that's not for decoration. Alright, so moving on beyond the fluff stuff, that's when we start getting into the real meaty crunch of this book. And the first one is Variant Combat. And I was surprised that they led with this, because this talks about the variant combat rules introduced in Ultimate Combat and how they tie into Golarion-specific themes. So, for instance, the dueling combat is introduced here by talking about the Aldori duelists, which, for those of you familiar with the Aldori sword style, these guys fight with this very special duelist sword, and I guess it makes a lot of sense that they would be involved in dual combat. And so it has rules for playing an Aldori an Aldori duelist, and it seems to be interesting. It involves this not prestige class as just a series of feats, doing something I really wanted Pathfinder to do. These are style feats that aren't style feats. These are very style-like feats, like the monk stances, but for various forms of combat. And they do this again and again throughout the book. So it's a chain of feats that you have to take. Aldori, Dueling Disciple, Duelist of the Roaring Falls, Duelist of the Shrouded Lake. But the basic gist of it is you intimidate somebody and get advantages because of that. But only while you're using the Aldori fighting style and using an Aldori sword and nothing else. It's like you can't use it. You have to just have this one-handed sword. But you do things like add dex to damage. If you can already add dex to damage, your damage gets bumped. When attacking intimidated foes, you get bonuses to that intimidation. It's a really neat style of combat that I don't see, because I know lots of people that like to do intimidates because it's a very cool RP purpose, but this is a character concept that if you build off of this, then using the intimidation really comes in handy. Then it goes over, next we have a lot of gladiatorial performance combat is brought up here. House of Perfection, and other variant rules. The next part that caught my eye really good was the section on monstrous mounts. So this sort of seemed odd because it doesn't tie into the variant rules very much, but this ties into the Cavalier, and it ties into several prestige classes, or sorry, archetypes in the book. So it's a way for you to ride monsters for classes that have mounts or animal companions that can be used as mounts. So instead of just the usual list, it's like Griffin, Hippocampus, Warg, some really big nasty ones, and then the focus on them. It has 2 feats. One is Monstrous Mounts Mastery that just says instead of your normal animal companion, you can use these special rules and you gain this mount. And a lot of them that have flying get that flying taken away, which is weird. But then they start doing the mountain advancement, so it's better than just buying a hippogriff for 5,000 gold pieces, which is what you can buy a hippogriff for, because the hippogriff will get stronger, but you can't ride him and fly until you take what's called the next feat, called Monstrous Mastery, which you take the second feat, and then your monster gets to act like its monstrous self, and it gets a bunch of special monster attacks and abilities based off of the monster type. For instance, the Griffin can now carry a rider while flying. The Warg gets a fearful howl cone attack if you have the Warg and you take its mastery. So it's a way to get these monsters, but the part I found weird about that is that in some cases it's stronger because they advance with your stats, but in other cases you can just go buy the monster, ride him anyway, and then then you're not slowed down. So I like the concept, and I understand that what this is I hate to say it, but this looks like we want to allow this in Pathfinder Society, and this seems like a very Pathfinder Society-ish rule set written specifically towards organized play, because in home campaigns and in AP campaigns, there's rules for just buying these critters outright and just use ride training to get them up, though they can't be companions, and this way they can be.
But a lot of these are intelligent creatures, and buying an intelligent creature is akin to slavery, which is not exactly a noble art. And so it's hard to say a paladin just went and bought that Pegasus and is forcing it to be his mount. Whereas in this case, it feels like you're kind of breaking them of their habits so that they get used to you as their rider, and then they get to be a mount again. They get to be they get to be a mount. They get their natural instincts back, and you get this loyal companion.
Yes, it can definitely be used that way. And I'm glad they separated it out like this and put it in a special rule section, because the other major reason this is in this class and why a lot of this rings that bell is because it's meant to be used with, let me find it real here, the Order of the Beast Cavalier archetype, which is an evil archetype that's amazingly focused on like the orcs of Belkzir and other evil bestial races that enslave these creatures and use them for their monstrous tendencies. And that archetype even goes beyond the mastery feat, and it just starts like giving these mounts you ride trample and gore and all these other horrible, like it focuses almost exclusively on this monster, and you're basically a cavalier that rides around on this big old monster, and that's your thing now. So that's why I was sort of slanting it over to that pact, because it would be a horrible evil thing to do to bind this sentient creature, which is exactly what they're doing. It's actually a really well written archetype, which comes on later. And then, and besides the variant rules, then that's what you get. You get a whole lot of, hey, are you a fan of this class? Here's a bunch of, oh gosh. Okay. Hey, you're a fan of this class? Sorry, my sugar glider went crazy. Hey, you're a fan of this class? Here are some archetypes rules for you. And every one of them is like really tied into Golarion. I see a lot of themes here, though. There's a very like sword-style-y duelist type things. because there's the Aldori Sword Lords. There is the Ustalaw Fencing, where you get the Lepusat Scar, as calling back to Varian Jaeger novels, where he was talking about his Lepusat dueling and the fact that he doesn't have a scar. It talks about the Lepusat Scar, the having the scar and how that affects you, and rules to go along with that. And then it just starts going into a whole bunch of prestige classes, actually just 2 prestige classes, but I was surprised to see prestige classes come in here, which are the Pure Legion Enforcer is the first one of those. It's basically, it's from Radum, where they're atheists, and this is how to build a anti-cleric, basically. They can recognize spellcasters, because divine spellcasters are illegal in Radum, and they can just shut down divine casting. They have a special maneuver where they can, like, take away your holy items and your spellcasting items. So, like, oh no, you're not going to get to cast that. Why? Because I just disarmed your holy symbol. And that was fun. But the other concept I see being used over here is the concept of guarding. There's several of these that are like professional guards. For instance, there's the Ulfin Guard, which, if you're familiar with Taldor, they love to have Ulfin bodyguards. In fact, their prince has a set of Ulfin bodyguards that really follow him around everywhere. So there's a whole prestige class about being an Ulfin Guard, and then later on, there's called the Order of the Guard, which is for Cavaliers, that again lets you be all guardy. So I saw that repeated several times. The concept of dueling and the concept of guarding have multiple instances through here. And then there's also several archetypes in here that give you guns, because Ultimate Combat was also the debut of the Gunslinger, so I see a lot of gunslingy-ish stuff here specific to Golarion, one of which was the Gun Scavenger Prestige class, which is just like, you don't really know much about guns. You've just been putting the pieces together, and like it actually, a lot of the prestige classes that give you guns or make you gun specialists reduces your misfire chance. This increases it, because you've just got a whole bunch of rust bucket pieces thrown together. But you're able to, like, get guns. It's a cheaper way to do it, and it's just a really fun flavor to toss on that. Besides the prestige classes and the archetype section, they then go into the schools. If you remember the magic schools from Ultimate Magic, and then the fighter schools and dojos that were introduced in Ultimate Combat, this actually has specific this has specific martial-focused schools and thieves guilds and organizations like that. And this is where I talk about it going kind of retro, because we haven't really seen the use of fame and prestige in products in a long time now. And it really ties into that. And this also ties into your editing section, because in one part of this, it uses the new fame and prestige points format for those listings, and then in the generic listings it just lists fame without a prestige point cost on some of those abilities, and some of those make sense and some of those don't. So, and that isn't made explicitly clear how this ability is used, because it doesn't follow the format that all the other prestige class, not prestige class, the prestige and fame rules work like they would in Pathfinder Society. There's another issue with those schools, in which you're actually earning lots of combat bonuses, like you're getting bonuses to AC, you're getting, there's one school that gives you bonuses to damage when you score critical hits as one of its benefits, and these aren't costing you character options. You're not taking feats to get here, you're not spending skill points or any tangible character stuff. There's just gold, and there's lots of ways to get around the gold. But you're also having to track fame and prestige and time, so you are putting the time in, and a lot of time actually. On average, it's going to take about 2 or 3 levels worth of dedication to this school. and doing the training and the test rolls like you would have to in the rules in Ultimate Combat to get these. But at the end of the day, a character that did this is stronger than a character that didn't do this. So if you take two characters, both level 6, the character that went to school is stronger. Though I guess you can make an argument that because you're spending gold, it's like you purchased a magic item, but the magic item is just training, which is how I view it. But at the same time, it also gives you a lot of ways out of having to spend that gold. Like you can go on a scholarship, which is a prestige. You can spend prestige on to be on quote unquote scholarship, and then you just waive the cost of the tuition.
So it does seem that one way or another you're spending some resource.
Yeah, but mostly you're spending time.
Okay.
Because to get prestige, you just do favors for the school. Or you have to enroll first, so that costs you a tiny amount of gold. And then after you enroll, you have to... there's a term. It takes this long for a term, but it recommends that if you have like a fast-paced campaign, you can just tie it to level up. So every time you level up, you have to take these exams, training roles, where you have this is the school teaches. I'll just pull one up. The House of Perfection, which is a dojo, and you have you pay 1,000 gold to get in. This is actually one of the expensive ones. And you have to take exams during your and these are training exams. So and they're basically skill checks. So you have to take an acrobatic exam, a climb exam, a swim exam, or a combat maneuver exam with DCs equal to 15 plus the student's base attack bonus. So you have to make these rolls to see how you're doing in school, and every time you pass one of those training checks, you're going to get a prestige point. And then there's also extracurricular tasks, which is different for each school. Basically, it falls around their theme. So for this one, it's like a really fancy dojo with perfection of body and 3D stuff. So you have to, like one of the extracurricular tasks is you can do an exhibition, and it's basically you make a bunch of skill checks and combat maneuver checks in this case because it's a monk dojo. And if you pass the rolls, then you get more prestige points, and then you can spend those prestige points on the awards like you would any other organization you're in. But one of the options to prestige is you can just spend 1 prestige, and you don't have to pay your fees anymore. So if you just dedicate pure time, you can just go collect the rewards, and they're not small rewards either. One of the rewards you can get this is a top end one, 50 fame, 30 prestige. You consult with one of the genies and get a limited wish.
Wow.
The Transcendent Mind, this is actually the easiest one to get, which is just 10 prestige points. And you gain you gain the extra key feat as a bonus feat. If you do not have a key pull, you gain a key pull of 2.
So,
and they're all like that. They're all worth taking. I like them for the roleplay possibilities. This is going to take time away from the campaign focus, which is why I'm glad they just said, well, if you don't want to put like actual roleplay time for a character going through these schools and having to go through that every time they level up, they can just make 5 consecutive tests as if they were studying and testing all at once, and ones they pass and fail, they get the fame for. Which is how I would run it in a mixed group.
Well, it sounds like something that could be tied into the downtime system from Ultimate Campaign.
Yeah, but it doesn't link to the downtime system, because it's tying into something that was before the downtime system, which is why I'm like, this is almost like traveling back in time to read this book. Now, I don't mean to harp on it. It's just, in fact, it's a cool concept. I was just trying to point out that using these, you could actually be better than a normal character, and that the rewards are not small time. They're big deal. The Aldori Academy.
Well, actually, Param, we're running pretty late now. Can you wrap up this point and move on to any other things you want to talk about the book as a whole?
Yeah, that was really the other point I wanted to make. Then they have the magic item chapter, which is just very Golarion specific, fightery type magic items. Nothing that stands out really much there. A lot of different uniforms. are like magic uniforms of the Eagle Knights, magic uniforms that the orcs like to wear, magic uniforms that has your banner behind you, big and bright, and helps you do like actually use the leading war rules. Basically, just like that, and it all ties in together. Overall, I give the book a buy under the conditions that you have Ultimate Combat and you need specific rules for Golarion. If you just want a book about cool combat options, this isn't it. This is a very specific what's written on the cover. This is Ultimate Combat and the extra rules there applied specifically to Golarion's themes.
All right. Well, hopefully my book... Well, actually, I would say that my book sounds like it hits the mark and then some, a little bit better than Inner Sea Combat. I'll be reviewing Pathfinder Player Companion, the Alchemy Manual. And let's just take a second to appreciate the cover, because first of all, it's got colors that pop in ways that we're not used to on covers of Pathfinder books. It's got Damiel, the iconic alchemist, who really was the only person that could be on this cover. And behind him, to his right, you've got an alchemy golem. Clever to have that included. And otherwise, he's clearly doing some kind of science-based magic doodad. As far as the contents of the book, it's mostly new items, and they're alchemical items. So it's exactly what you think of when you think of an alchemical item. It's low cost. I believe the most expensive item in the whole book is 1,000 gold pieces. Low cost, single-use items. And so you can either be a very low-level character and afford quite a few of these things, actually. Actually, this is a great book for a low-level character because it gives you a lot of options that if you're in a jam or if there's something that you know your class will be good at but you're not quite there yet, you can spend a chunk of your starting gold and just take some basically liquid class feature so that only once you'll be able to do something cool, but you will be able to do something cool. It's divided up into different themes. So you've got the Belkzen War Academy, and this is a bunch of alchemy based on what an orc society would need. So it's a lot of stuff based on the Intimidate skill, a lot of stuff based on fear. They've got a couple of cool different items that are just war paint, and it's alchemical war paint. So it actually not only is it physically scary, but it kind of starts seeping in and will mess your brain up if you wear this stuff for too long consecutively. Dagger marked poisons, you've got a whole bunch of new poisons here, a couple of feats related to the poisons. Darrow Fungus Academy, so this is very Darklands based, it's very hallucinogenic, we've got some new poisons again. Dwarven Magic Ales. This, I would have liked a little bit more of this. We've only got 4 new items. They're all basically magic beer. And they go into a great amount of detail. It just would have been cool if we had 4 or 5 more of them. It does have a new archetype called the Drunken Rager Barbarian, which may be dwarf-specific, kind of like the archetypes from Advanced Race Guide, but it doesn't explicitly say that anywhere. So I'm going to assume that unless it explicitly says it, anyone can take this. You get Drunken Rage, so anytime you drink, you gain these, what are they called, drunk points? A Drunken Rage point. And these are very similar to your Rage points. In fact, the whole class just feels like it's a reflavoring of a regular barbarian, but instead of just naturally raging, you've got to drink first. You've got Staggering Evasion, so you're not actually evading things because you're such a canny rogue. You're evading things because you stumbled at just the right moment. But the problem is that it takes up a lot of space for something that doesn't really do much different from a regular barbarian. And given the choice of either the Drunken Rager archetype or more magical ale, probably would have liked a couple more magical ales. Homunculi Academy of Lepistad. The Katapeshi Drug Crafting. I realized that Pesh was a drug in Pathfinder. I never associated that that's where Katapesh gets its name. Katapesh is actually named after the drug it's famous for. But one thing I like about this, if you can see on her back, she's got a hookah. It's actually a traveler's hookah. Hookah is a special pipe that you can get multiple people smoking from. It's kind of like a bong, but instead of being illegal, you can actually smoke just herbs and whatnot. We've got 3 different magical hookahs here that you can use for the various alchemical items that are associated with Katapesh. Keonan alchemical archery. Onopion Ooze Academy. I don't know much about Onopion. I'm not even too sure. Oh, is it in Nex? Anyway, I don't know about it, but it's a whole bunch of people that are specialized in creating all the oozes that you find in the sewers of every city. Paizo Herbalism brings Tianxia into it. The Thuvian Wish Academy. That's actually, I don't recall much about this, so we'll just move on. And Verisian Fireworks. So those are all the different categories. We've got dozens upon dozens of different alchemical items. Odds are you will find an alchemical item that is useful for your character, no matter what your character is. But what I really like about this book, this manual, is the presentation. Because I'm going to hopefully show, it doesn't really show in the camera, but on the inside covers, there are alchemical reagents. And each one is listed, so black powder, brimstone, gold, and then each one is assigned a symbol. So gold is just a circle with a dot in the middle of it. Dark wood is kind of like a chandelier type symbol. Cold iron looks a little bit like a scarab. Dew of lunary is a half moon. If you're using the new rules for spontaneous alchemy, which I'll get to in a second, because those are actually pretty awesome and one of the reasons to buy this book. But otherwise, these symbols show up all throughout the book, and especially in the back when it just summarizes, just kind of makes a couple of index pages that are like a catalog for all of the alchemical items that are listed in this book. It has a recipe. So, for example, to make an acid neutralizer, you need 20 of whatever actually, there's also a legend here. So you need 20 pieces of brimstone, 10 pieces of salt, 5 pieces of urea. Now, this is all summarized in the price. There's nothing that the recipe does other than what's said in the price, but just the presentation is so amazing. I feel like I'm reading some kind of medieval science manual. After the symbols of the ingredients, it shows you a symbol for the alchemical process, so in this case, calcination. And again, this has very little, effectively zero mechanical impact on the game. But just the cleverness, the way this is presented, just draws me in so much more into the alchemical manual, the alchemy manual, that I'm a little bit in love with this book, just for these symbols, just for the way it makes me think like an alchemist, that much more. And finally, probably one of the main draws for this book is spontaneous alchemy. What this is basically accepting that the crafting rules are kind of weird. They're unnecessarily mathematic and not particularly intuitive. Spontaneous alchemy wipes that out and says, okay, we're going to do it, we're going to present it more like a ritual. And so you've got your recipe, the craft type, the amount of time it takes, what tools you need, and like a special entry. And then it goes through the processes, and again, this is mostly for flavor, but if you want to do calcination, which if you wanted the acid neutralizer you would want to do, it takes 1 hour, and you need a crucible to do it. Here we've got the crafting tool, a crucible. And there's a small chance that if you fail your craft check, that a mishap happens, and then you roll on the D6 mishap table. There's also 2 feats on this page for spontaneous alchemy, where you've got instant alchemy. If you have 1 rank in craft, you can take all of these craft alchemy rules and reduce the time considerably. You can reduce something that is measured in minutes. You can do that in a standard action. So you really are becoming a spontaneous alchemist. You are just taking a whole bunch of ingredients, you're crushing it, you're burning it, you're doing whatever actually needs to be done, and then boom, you have created your alchemical, your alchemist item, your alchemical item. These rules are so much just better than the crafting rules. It only takes a couple of pages to summarize them. They're much more flavorful. They make more sense. They're engaging. They pull you into the world. It's not some just weird equation that isn't even a catch-all because it's specific to the item you're trying to craft rather than an umbrella idea of what items. So all Alchemist X would have a certain DC rather than having a specific DC for Alchemist Fire. This contends for anything that you want to do, anything from anywhere in the rules, any item from Ultimate Equipment can be crafted using the spontaneous alchemy rules. They are game changing. This is the main reason you want to buy this book, is that it takes the craft rules and says this is a better way of doing craft. It's only specific to alchemical items, so you're not going to be able to craft wondrous items, you're not going to be able to craft equipment with this, but at least it's a step in the right direction that if you want to have a character that is actively crafting things, here's some cool rules for it. And overall, the Alchemy Manual, I mean, even if you're not playing an alchemist, in fact, there's very little in there for alchemists. There's no new discoveries, there's no alchemist archetypes, but there's a whole bunch of alchemical items that are useful for absolutely every character.
So this is Alchemy, parentheses, the skill manual?
It is more related to the skill and more of a catalog than anything. Oh, Alex and Gunis in chat says that the weird thing about the dwarf drunken barbarian thing is that there's already a drunken barbarian in the advanced player's guide. I forgot to double check that, but yeah, I thought there already was a barbarian that was that was drinking based. So yeah, now we've got two. And
so, like, the rules change when you get short and beardy?
Well, except that it doesn't specifically say you have to be short and beardy. It's just implied because it's on a page about dwarven war ale or dwarven magical ale, which is not magical. They specifically call it that, even though it's called magical ale, it's an alchemical ale, it's science-based.
So is all of this non-magical? Like,
it's all science.
Ooh. Likes me some pseudoscience.
And actually, I showed the recipes to my wife Tina, who is a certified real-life scientist, and she said, that's very cute. That's very nice, dear. So there we go. Scientist approved.
Excellent. So I take it this is a buy then?
I strongly recommend it, especially if you play a lot of low-level characters. And I suspect that most of this is going to be Pathfinder Society legal. And Pathfinder Society is made up like 70% of low-level characters, levels 1 to 5. All of these items are useful for level 1 to 5 characters, and a lot of them are very situational items. You can buy an item based on what you expect to find in a, like most Pathfinder Society scenarios, it starts with, this is what we're doing. Well, then the next thing you should do is a trip to the Alchemist and bring your Alchemy Manual with you at all times, because there's something that's going to help you on that adventure.
Excellent.
All right, Param, I think we're ready to wrap things up.
Yep, let's wrap it up.
Right after this, guys. All right, what have we got? 1, 2,
Shall we get
3, 4. Oh, you know what? I forgot to get a bunch of names for Kickstarter shoutouts. I need to just make a master list to show which ones we've shouted out to. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not happy with the shoutouts right now. They're just too like, hello, this person has a name and they helped us and thank you. And I'd like it to be a little more personal. And it's very easy to make it a little more personal if I just spend a little more time researching. So, okay, we'll skip it again for this episode, and hopefully by the next episode I'll be able to personalize the shoutouts, and I'll make sure I go back and any of the ones that I didn't give a personal touch to, they get a personal touch in the future. And Param, I just want to make sure, how's our, when I say make some, you say noise? Make some?
Noise.
Okay. Just making sure, because we've had weird technical stuff this episode.
That was one of the things I wanted to shout, but you've already got it.
You take it then, because I've got 3 or 4 other things.
But you know more about it than I do.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Okay, well, you can do this last one.
Okay, Roger.
All right, cool. Ready?
Right.
3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining us for another episode of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, we want to wrap things up by shouting out to a couple of things that we've come across of interest to us, and we think of interest to Pathfinder enthusiasts. First of all, this is a really big one, and I expect this is going to be one of the main things we're going to be talking about in the future. Basically, anytime we bring up Pathfinder Society, we're going to be talking about pathfindersociety.net. In fact, we often talk about the shared GM folder. Anyway, oh yeah, the shared prep GM folder on Google Docs. This is going to take, I think, a lot of what that does already and expand upon it. So it's going to be as invaluable of a tool, I predict, as that. But pathfindersociety.net is a website. It's a free website, a community-based website, where anyone who's a member of Pathfinder Society can go there and find great resources, great blogs, just thoughts from your Pathfinder Society, your venture captains, your 5-star GMs, just the people that are really invested in Pathfinder Society are sharing their thoughts. I mean, Pathfinder Society is so similar to just Pathfinder and any other Pathfinder role-playing game, and yet because of its global expanse, there's so much stuff that's just very specific to being a Pathfinder Society player. And it's about time that Pathfinder Society has a resource like this. This is something that's been put together by several veteran veteran venture officers. And shoot, I don't have the name. I don't have the names handy, but about us. There we go. Including Chris Mulligan, who is a friend of the show. We've talked about him sometimes, and he's actually often in chat and providing great questions, especially when it comes to Pathfinder Society. He provides great answers. Royce Thigpen, who is the web developer. Lucas Servito is the venture lieutenant in Massachusetts. Brent Jans, from venture captain from Edmonton, will be one of the bloggers. Andy Christian from Minnesota, venture lieutenant, will be another blogger. Andrew Hopkins, Brian Darnell, friend of the show, Michael Von Hasselen, and Scott Young. All of these are venture captains, venture lieutenants from all over the United States, Canada, and I don't see anything outside of the United States and Canada, but I doubt there's any problem if an Australian venture captain or European venture captain wants to get in touch with them, wants to be one of the bloggers. But there are years of organized play experience shared out above between these guys. In fact, I'm going to say there are decades of shared experience here. And a lot of them we already know as people that just love Pathfinder Society, love organized play, and just want to share perspective and make things more fun and easier on people. If you go now, there's already, I believe, at least 4 blogs. Looks like 5 blogs. There's Hidden Treasures is one of the features, and it's talking about items for animals. Pathfinder Society Season Summary, they've started with Season 0. GM Perspective, Challenging GMs versus Adversarial GMs, How to Not Be the Killer GM. That's another one of the blogs up there. So, yeah, if you're at all interested in Pathfinder Society, this should be your first stop. Maybe after Paizo.com's Pathfinder Society message board, but this is right up there. I'm looking forward to seeing how this expands, and I plan on using this as a tool, and I hope to share a lot of the blog posts of interest as they start popping up.
Excellent. I'm definitely looking forward to this because I need all the help I can get when I'm trying to get these society games going, and I don't have the time to really become an uber venture lieutenant, venture captain level prepper, so just having a little list of, hey, remember when you're running Season 0, don't do that, or things like that, very handy.
Next up, I want to shout out to board member David Jester Gibson. I've talked a couple of times about his webcomic 5-Minute Workday, which is just a single-panel webcomic, and I find it really clever, usually really on the nose. He is venturing into self-publishing. He's going to be self-publishing his first novel, and you can find out more about that and his webcomic at 5mwd.com/publishing. So congratulations to Jester on that, and I look forward to reading it when I have the time. I'm going to be honest, Jester, it's not going to be any time soon, but I'm going to try and make the time to fit that in. And speaking of blogs, Robert Brooks, I mentioned his new blog, The Encounter Table. I mentioned it either last episode or in a recent episode. Well, to commemorate Geiger's recent passing, he has created a blog called Pop Creature Xenomorph. Xenomorph being the technical name for an alien and the classification of the aliens from the Alien movies. He's got a wide variety of creatures based on the aliens from the Alien movies, which were originally designed by H.R. Geiger. So you've got the Xenomorph subtype, the Xenomorph Drone, the Xenomorph Queen, the Face Hugger, and I thought the Chest Burster was there, but no. But there are variant Xenomorphs, acid spitting, quadruped, aquatic, to represent various different monsters that we've seen in the different Alien movies. And these are really, he really gets it. He's really on the mark. Acid Blood is an amazing ability, and it's exactly what happens in the movies. If you hit it with a slashing or piercing weapon, then you take 1d6 points of acid damage for 3 rounds. Makes sense. That's exactly what happens in the movie. It's nice and clean.
Ouch.
And, yes, and painful. So I am a big fan of the Alien. Okay, I'm a big fan of Aliens, and pretty happy with Alien. I just prefer Aliens. And then I acknowledge that there are more movies. This blog post, everything I like about Aliens as a potential world and as a couple of really good movies, it's realized. So congratulations on that, Robert Brooks, and congratulations on getting the encounter table shouted out to twice in a row. Keep going. See if you can make it a three-peat.
And finally, I want to remind everybody that Gen Con registration is happening real soon, May 18th at noon. Make sure you remember at noon, because some of these events will sell out as quickly as the hotel rooms did. Most specifically, you might want to look out for the Pathfinder specials, plural, because they are having 2 this year, one to close out this season and one to open up the next one, which is going to be interesting. So definitely put that on the list. Paizo has their full schedule up in the event catalog, so you can go and check that out. There are hundreds of them. It's worth noting that they're going to have 900 seats at the specials this year, Ryan. That's even more than last year.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure where 900 people are going to fit.
I think he just said that they're getting more of the ballroom, so I think that means they're going to actually take the walls down further, and it's going to become a longer hall again. But man, they're going to have to have megaphone setups all over the place. So yeah, make sure you get your tickets ready. Remember to register events. You first have to get your ticket. Do that well in advance so that you don't get caught in the line. You can make your wish list, which means you pick the tickets you want and get them all ready, and then when tickets open, you can press one button and try and buy them all. So get ready for that, and I know that I will be hastily hovering over that.
I also should thank our guests, Jim Zub and Eric. I should thank them without butchering their names. I want to thank our guests, Jim Zub and Eric Mona, for joining us, as well as all the people that provided questions and listened in live. And until next time, I'm Ryan Costello Jr.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Parham.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction. All right, I'm just going to check for any last-minute comments that I may have missed. Yeah, Eric Klingenpeel? Sorry, Eric, I've seen you in the chat before, and why do I feel like this is the first time I'm pronouncing your name? Yes, Eric Milliken is the brains and the backbone of PathfinderSociety.net. I was pretty sure of that, but I didn't want to give him credit for something that he didn't deserve. Of course, he did deserve it, so I should have just stuck to my guns and given him credit. All right, Param, I think we can kill the live broadcast. Take it easy, guys.